Hello, mech fans, and welcome to the Valhalla Club. Grab a Fusionaire and join us as we talk Battletech and the latest happenings around the Colorado Battletech community.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Valhalla Club. This is your local bartender, Matt, and I'm here joined by Mike.
Howdy.
Dave.
Hello.
BourBen.
Howdy.
And our local painting connoisseur and special guest tonight, Mr. Rick.
Hello.
There we go. So, you know everything about the rest of us, but we're going to ask our special guest tonight, Rick, a couple of questions so you guys can get to know him as well as we know him. So, Rick, you get to give your little spiel about how you got into Battletech, and your favorite faction, and maybe your favorite mech. Let's go with that.
Oh, man. Those are some hard-hitting questions. I got into Battletech.
Starting off deep.
Yeah, so I think I was in, elementary school or middle school, and I found a MechWarrior 2 CD for, in the $10 bin at, a Office Max or Staples or one of those sorts of stores. And I was a big nerd, played a lot of video games, really enjoyed that one. I think even MechWarrior 3 had been out for a while, so I got that pretty cheap. And they got really excited for MechWarrior 4, which was, in all the gaming magazines or something at the time. So I played a ton of the video games growing up. Never really got into the minis until, unfortunately, Clicky Tech in late high school, beginning of college.
Oh, you and Mike are in the same boat.
Yeah. So I played Spirit Cats mostly in Clicky Tech. And then I kind of got away from tabletop gaming, being a college student, couldn't really afford it, and then joined the Army and didn't really have time to do it or a place to do it. And I don't know, different community, life went different ways, but I got back into tabletop gaming with X-Wing, and I really loved it because all the minis were pre-painted and I didn't have to paint anything. And I kept looking at other hobbies. I was like, I'm not going to get into that. I don't feel like painting stuff. It's intimidating. I don't want to do it. And then I was at a school in the Army down at Fort Rucker, and one of my buddies who I just met in this school, we were grunting Army things at each other, and he grunted Battletech at me, and I grunted Battletech ? At him. Found out we both like Battletech. Everyone's talking about this Kickstarter thing that was happening at the time, and I was still real hesitant. The minis look great, but still didn't really want to paint things. But he talked me into it, told me he'd show me how to paint stuff, and what originally was a very well curated selection of a company of mechs that I was going to put together and paint.
Mm-hmm.
Quickly multiplied, and now I definitely have a problem. So that's how I got into Battletech.
Yeah, you're in the right place. We all have a similar issue.
Favorite faction, I really like. I call it the Razelhog Republic. I know there's been debate on how to pronounce that, but
hey, this is not the pronunciation podcast.
Yeah, we had our episode. It's over now. Give that to Trent.
So yeah, I love an underdog. So I originally painted my mercenary unit so I could do them Razelhog or Mercs or part of the Razelhog Dominion in the future. So I wanted, because I was really only going to paint 12 mechs. Seriously, guys. I tried to have a nice paint scheme that I could kind of pretend it's in one faction or another, and so I was going to get some clan mechs, do them Ghost Bear, some Intersphere mechs, do them my Razelhog Mercs, and then they could mix and match as needed. And I would never have to buy more mechs or paint more mechs in the future. So...
And then WolfNet happened.
Yeah, then WolfNet... Well, then I moved to Colorado. I think is the
real issue here, yeah.
Yeah. And it's all you guys who were just, peer pressured me into buying more mechs and painting more stuff.
Exactly.
But I like underdog factions. I recently painted 2 lances of Say Knives Lancers for Matt's thing up north.
That was awesome.
That was pretty fun.
Yeah, I
And
did
now
like
I'm
the way
just
this turned out.
Yeah, that came out great. But now I've got all my mechs that are unpainted kind of getting separated out into different lances and companies for different factions. Because now that I've painted a whole bunch of blue boys, a little burnt out on that and want to dabble in other things. Favorite mech? That's hard. I mean, favorite mech that I painted is the Atlas that I just painted for Genghis Khan.
Oh, cool.
The Odin.
Rick, I'm
themed
surprised with all the
Atlas.
number of times I've played you. I'm really surprised you did not pick a melee mech as your favorite.
I mean, I do love the melee mechs. I really like my Nodachi that I took the sword off and put a hatchet on to disrespect the Draconis Combine.
I mean, I still think that there's a good chunk of the Colorado people that remember you as the plushy Irby painter. So,
Oh yeah, yeah, the plushie and then the gold one and the swamp one.
yeah,
I was gonna do a fourth, but couldn't get it done in time. I have a tendency to slowly paint things, and then some event comes up on the horizon, and then I'll procrastinate and paint like all weekend trying to get something done, which is what I did with those urban mechs.
I don't think you're alone.
No. We all plan accordingly and have everything painted at least a week prior to an event.
At
Lies.
least.
Yeah,
Lies.
we don't paint in hotel rooms.
That's
in
right.
Vegas.
That's
Yeah.
right.
I definitely didn't finish that Atlas less than 12 hours before Genghis Khan.
Unheard of. Cool. Well, good. It's good to get to know Rick a little bit more. So now we're going to throw into our pile of shame and games played. So we'll just go around the horn and check in on what everyone's kind of hobby progress is lately and any games they've been playing. So we'll start off with the venerable Gray Fox himself, BourBen.
Oh man, yeah, it's been a busy month for me. I spent some time starting a new shrapnel story, doing some research for that, and then about the last 3 weeks, I've been painting up about 25 units of Hanson's Rough Riders as part of my Gen Con list.
Justice for
And-
Hansons.
Right.
That's right. Hashtag Justice for Hansons. I made a purchase on Ares that netted me some more stuff to paint. That's not going to be good.
Go ahead and
then-
tell us what you bought at Ares, Ben. Go ahead. I already know, so you should disclose.
There may or may not have been, Poseidon in there, and
Yes!
a couple of a Marshall and a Fireball, about 4 Fox armored cars, 2 Sprint VTOLs, and about 2 more platoons of battle armor because you never had enough.
You don't
So
have
now I'm
enough.
not the only person who has 3 super heavies.
Yep. So
Didn't you recently also have a massive pile of infantry and battle armor, and you just
I
added
did.
to it?
I just added to it. Yeah. Well, 'cause
To be fair, those things are really cheap.
I mean, they are right? Like $2 for a string of 3 of them, and you can't just buy 3. You got to have like 4, so you buy in multiples of 4. So, and then recruited one of the guys that works in the same building as me. He was kind of curious about BattleTech, so the last 2 weeks at Hobbytown, I've been kind of running him through the intro to Classic. So that's my pile of shame right now.
Nice. How about yourself, David? I know you've been busy.
Well, as far as games played, actually I had Rick and, let's see, it was Rick, Damien, Alex, and Josh over to my house last Sunday, and I ran them through a scenario against pirates, and so Alex, Damien, and Josh were on one team, and they each had a customized mech somewhere in the Jihad era for the Merc list around 1300 PV. I believe it was oh god, now I gotta remember.
There was a rifleman,
It was a rifleman, a warhammer, an enforcer, and
a Nova.
a Blackhawk. It was the
Yeah.
Blackhawk KU, the Inner Sphere variant.
Yeah.
And what they didn't know, they knew they were going to fight against me playing pirates. And what they didn't know is their contract was open, and I had invited Rick over to bring a lance of his battle mechs to compete for the contract. So they all gather at the house and find out that they're also playing against Rick. So this is a classic Hexus game with, I want to say, probably 20 minis on the table. And I had a couple surprises for him during the game. Two assault mechs kind of popped out of nowhere to try and ruin their days. But I definitely underestimated what happens when people customize their mechs and how bad skill 4 is in Classic. So my poor pirates, who had more BV than their combined force, got their asses handed to them. And so it was a really fun game. I mean, I think everybody had a good time. They completely annihilated me. It was pretty funny.
That's what pirates are for, right?
It was what pirates are for. But as far as hobby progress, I have been getting a lot of painting done lately. I think I have completed, I want to say 9 minis are complete, and then I have another 15 that are in various stages of completion right now on the table, and I will be taking those with me next week on my work travel so that I can paint them in the hotel when I am bored.
Nice.
But yeah, that's been my hobby progress.
Voice. Mikey Mike, how about yourself?
All right. So to start off, I'll apologize for my poor audio. I'm on AirPod because I'm in California at the moment. And if there's wind in the background, it's because I'm outside, because I'd rather do this outside than in a bay barracks.
He doesn't want to get made fun of.
Pile o' shame remains constant. Work's been busy, so no progress in the painting department. However, games played. I also had a game this past month with our dearest guest, Mr. Rick. I was on staff duty a couple weeks ago, and he also had to be on post. So he came over and we played an Outstrike game in the battalion conference room after battalion command left, which took forever.
Yeah, they took their sweet ass
But
time.
it was probably one of my most fun Outstrike games in a very long time, especially for just mech on mech combat.
It's nice
we
when you
did
don't
a
have
little.
a time limit.
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
we did a, what was it, 400? Was it 400? It was either 4 or
400 or
500.
500.
I want to say it was 4. Either
I
way,
think it was 4.
we did a, say 400 PV fight. Ghost Bear via Ghost Bear. And that was set in the Ill Clan era. So
I had the
we
joiners
were,
and you had the refusers. Is that what they're called?
I think, yeah, I had, well, in the source book, they're refusers. In A Question of Survival, they're deniers. But same thing. So you had the joiners, I had the refusers for the to join the Ill Clan vote, which has spawned what is currently happening in the Dominion. So if you haven't read the source book yet or Question of Survival, I guess that's some spoilers, but they've been out for a little while now, and shame on you, catch up. So it was a little bit of Ghost Bear Civil War action, and it was buku fun. But that's about it for games played. I've been busy at home and work, so
You are not forgiven, sorry.
roger that.
Let's see. Rick, you get to jump in as well. I mean, you already kind of talked about what you painted in the recent past, but anything in the last month or so that you've been up to?
Well, I mean, the two other hosts already took the 2 games I played to talk about, but they were both super fun.
Bam.
Excited for that to play more games with both of them. Both playing games with all you guys. But as far as painting goes,
Better.
I mean, I'm always a fan of Alpha Strike. Even Hexus Classic is fun, but I always lean back to Alpha Strike. I did play a game I got my wife to play like a month or 2 ago.
What?
Yeah, I got her to play Death from Above's Destiny system. I put her through a little training mission as a Clan Nova Cat tradie mech warrior.
You must share these weirding ways of how you convinced your wife to play.
I like it.
Yeah, she had a great time. I really liked that system. It has a nice level of crunch without going full classic. It's a nice balance between the two. As far as painting progress, I've mostly just been making plans and buying things, and then gathering my things into little groups. After painting that atlas, I kind of burnt out for a while, and then I went back to work after we had our son. So, real life caught up with me again. Couldn't just sit there and paint while changing diapers.
It happens.
So
That's where
right
you
now,
get that brown.
very good basic material. So right now I'm painting a raven, which I thought would be fun because the very first mini I painted was a raven. So we'll get to see the side by side. The original was a metal iron, the Ironman's Metals version, and this is the CGL version. So we'll see how they come out.
Cool, very cool. And for myself, I have been busy with the old RL real life stuff, but I've still got in a whole bunch of printing stuff as far as 3D stuff, 3D printing for an upcoming event that we'll be having. Some swag for everyone. And I've been painting a little bit a Jade Falcon for us just to honor John because he's not here. But it's been mostly just contrast paint with some dry brushing and stuff, so nothing too intense. And as far as games played, we've had a kind of a rough time over the last month getting our usual Wednesday crew together, just with my travels and others kind of having health stuff. But we had a good. We've been doing some good play testing for an upcoming event on Friday nights every other week, so that's been good. So that is our pile of shame and games played segment. So there you go. Now we can move on to the main metal. And we have Rick on tonight because he is you wouldn't know it from how he describes how he never wanted to paint things. But Rick is a great painter, and we have him on because we're going to be talking about painting tonight. So Rick already kind of went into his painting history, and I'll give mine, and then we'll kind of go around and talk about how you started painting, what you started painting, whatever it is. So I'll just say that up till November 2021, I had never painted a mini in my life, and I got all my stuff from the first Kickstarter. Moved here to Colorado, and just like you, Rick, there were people to play here, and I was like, everyone else is painting stuff, so I feel like I have to paint stuff too.
Yeah, they're very aggressive and
I know.
persuasive.
They're always like that. No, I mean, no one said anything, but it was just like, oh, your stuff looks so cool. I wonder if I can make my stuff look anything like that. And so I just started with, I just bought some Army Painter paints or whatever and started trying to paint. And then I ran across this incredible thing called contrast paint. And this allowed me to just kind of slouch into contrast paints and dry brushing. And that's almost exclusively what I've been doing until now. I throw a little paint on the cockpit or whatever, but that's kind of my painting history. So mine's not long and involved, relatively new to painting, but I do enjoy it most of the time. But anyways, how about yourself, BourBen? Let's go with you.
Shoot. I mean, I think I painted my first mini in 1990. And it wasn't that great. I still have it just as a reminder, kind of a reminder thing. It had like a base coat of gray and like some black stripes on it, and that was my Gray Death Shadowhawk, So, and that was kind of my painting style for probably the next 10 or 15 years. I didn't really try to advance too much. Just base coat, some camo stuff, maybe do a little detail here and there. And then COVID hit, and I kind of started watching a lot of B1B Flyers videos on different aspects of detail and dry brushing. And I'm like, oh shit, there's a lot more to this.
Those are the videos through Camo Specs on YouTube, right?
Yeah. Yep. Right. The Camo Specs ones. So I was like watching his videos, and I'm painting, trying out these techniques and stuff like that. And it helped me kind of. I mean, I'm nowhere near a good painter yet, but it helped me become a better painter for sure. To the point where now I'm using washes and dry brush and decals and my basing. I've been focusing on my basing, how I base stuff and what I do for that kind of stuff. So there was a lot that went into it, and so I'm kind of just at the point now where I'm still I'm just getting into the two colors of painting. And doing some paneling and stuff like that I still got to get my dry brush technique a little bit better, but I'm still working on some of that stuff. So
Nice.
That's kind of my history with painting.
Very cool. How about yourself, Dave? How'd you get into painting?
So I think the first mini I ever painted was a BattleTech mini, and that was in the, I want to say, early 90s. Neighbor gave me a set of the, I want to say, 3rd edition plastic minis, and painted them with like your standard testers, enamel. Just, they look like complete garbage. And I don't think I painted another mini until maybe 1 or 2 D&D minis on and off over the years, but not until the Game of Armored Core, or the Game of Armored Combat came back out, did I really start painting again. And my actually, no, scratch that. 2014, when the 25th anniversary came out, I bought 2 of those box sets, and I was on training with the railroad, sitting in a hotel in Kansas, painting minis in my hotel room, and skill hadn't improved. So, but now I've kind of been mostly self-taught. I haven't really watched a lot of the Camo Specs videos. I think the only one I've actually watched is I think the cockpit one, and I figured out that I can't paint cockpits, so at least not like that. So I gave up on that, and I just went back to figuring things out on my own. So my painting didn't really improve until I bought an airbrush, and that is a absolute game changer. The airbrush really allowed me to get really good base coats and then do the detail work with the actual brush. So, yeah, and really recently I've really started exploring dry brushing techniques and playing a little more with the cockpit paints, but I've never used contrast paints.
Whoa.
I have really only ever done brush and airbrush.
Very nice. Very nice. Let's see, Mike, what about yourself?
So I too had never painted a mini before of any type until I got my Kickstarter stuff, and I started out with just like a base over red, some Nuln Oil, and tried red. Tried to put some like camo-ish lines down in the Nuln Oil. Learned real quick that you can easily over varnish a mini, or like especially if you hold the can too close, because at the time I was just using rattle can.
Yeah.
Then things are shiny. And they'll probably always be that way just because it was the first ones I'd ever painted. But as time's gone on, like for my clan units that I started painting out, I did like this Aurora camo scheme, which looked pretty good. And then I started doing all my Intersphere units in Kellhounds because I was like, okay, that Aurora camo scheme was hard and a lot of effort, and I wanted something easy, so I just went with the old red and black for my Kellhounds.
Oh, yeah.
And that was, I'm not done with them, as you've heard me say over the past few episodes, because life's just been busy. But last year, was it last year? No. Christmas 2021. Yep. 2021. Wife got me an airbrush, and that definitely sped things up because I'd have to wait for it to get warm or have nice weather to prime. And now I can prime year round in my house. And base coat and all these great things. Base coating's way faster. And then I started experimenting with not doing just base coats, but doing actual layers. So I started doing my Kellhounds in a two-tone layer with the airbrush. So like I'll base black, layer red, and then have to go back over with the black to clean up the red overspray. But it looks good. And the fade is beautiful. I love the fade an airbrush gives a two-tone paint scheme, and it would work for a three-tone as well. It just looks awesome. Rick's got some beautiful airbrush units as well, but I'll let him talk about those. But so yeah, started out, simple noob, probably went a little too far too fast into my Aurora scheme, and then backed out a little bit into my Kellhounds, and then work and life got really busy, and I got super bogged down, so I haven't had much progress over the past while, as you've heard me keep saying, month by month. But that's generally it. I've used contrast a few times. Once I finished out my, was it Trinary? I think it was a Trinary of the Aurora camo scheme. I went to a two-tone white and light blue for the remainder of my clan units, and I did white base, like a light blue left arm, right arm, left leg offset, and they look really good. I know a lot of people absolutely hate painting white. I personally don't have an issue with it. What I tell everybody is what I did, because they're like, what'd you do to make it look good? Like, if I put non oil, it gets too dark. I'm like, well, that's your problem using non oil. You don't want to use non oil on white.
Everything.
So, not everything. So to get that shade effect or wash effect on white, I base white, and then I use Games Workshop Apothecary White, which is a white contrast. So it's how I'm able to make the recessed areas get that shade effect while maintaining a good level of white on the large flat panels. That's the majority of my contrast work. I've experimented with a few others, haven't liked them to the point it's not worth bringing up. I also don't remember at this point, because I tried it once and was like, nah, and abandoned it. But so that's my tip for white. But yeah, lately it's just airbrush base, airbrush layer, and then I'll go in with the dry brush, which I also need to get better at. I kind of just be lazy, and I'll just dry brush some metallic silver for like a weathered metal effect. I mean, they're machines of war. It makes sense for them to have some metal showing, right? Scraping on trees and buildings as they crash through them, this, that, and the other. And then it's just the weapon barrels, and then final laser effects. And it's overall pretty simple. I've just been busy, and I'm so behind.
I mean, there's no requirement for it, so in general, so it's all good. Yeah. Well, I just wanted to kind of go through everyone's painting history to just kind of, especially for any like listeners that are kind of just beginning, like painting, especially. We all like start kind of sucking it up, and big old splotchy globs of paint, and got to start somewhere. So I know that. I mean, I don't consider myself a great painter, but it was always that nervousness of how am I really going to paint these when I started painting? But just doing it, you kind of overcome it.
Or you're just so nervous when you start painting that your hand's just shaking.
Not that way, but I didn't want to ruin my minis. And this was even before I was like, I knew about stripping the paint off if you mess it up or whatever. But I didn't feel like my stuff could look good like others, but I felt like, I need to paint it somehow. I can't just leave it the gray mass all the time. So, yeah.
All practice.
Yeah, it takes time, like everything else. So
your Davy and Heavy look good though.
Yeah, I mean, they're good. They're okay.
I think so. I think they look good.
They work. They work. I like the way they look, and that's the most important thing, I guess, right? So let's
Absolutely.
talk about schemes. So faction. Let's talk about everyone's favorite faction paint scheme and how you pick that scheme or any other scheme. Do you like pick all your units first and then decide on different colors? How do you guys do it? Let's. I'll just say what I start with. I usually start with picking a faction from the lore that I feel like, oh, I don't have a force for this. I'd love to play it in either an event or a scenario or something like that. I'll pick out the units that I think fit with that kind of that lore-driven faction. So like my Davian units, they all have to have like 3 or 4 autocannons sprouting off their arms and chest and just waiting to explode, of course. Then I went through on camospecs.com, I think. I can't remember if it's a .com. So Camospecs is the official source for BattleTech faction schemes. And then there's also Unit Color Compendium as well, I think, which has some kind of digital schemes as well that kind of look cooler, but they're not like real painted. So I usually go between those two and find a scheme for the faction that I like that kind of represents the classic for that faction. Then I'll go ahead and look at the colors that I've got and try and work something out. If not, I'll grab a color or two. And then my favorite faction scheme, this last year I've been painting the Merrick Militia scheme. So that's purple with red and blue stripes on either side. And I really like it, but I still think my favorite is the Davian. I forget if it's the Guards. It's kind of lighter blue with a red and white stripe on the left side. And that was my first attempt at doing a stripe, and I think it came out pretty good, so I really like that color scheme. So that's how I do it. We'll just kind of talk about how we do it. This is for you guys to kind of pick and choose whatever you want from what we were talking about. But Rick, how do you go about doing this kind of stuff?
Much the same. Like I'll pick a unit. So I kind of go back and forth between browsing unit color compendium and camo specs, or some unit that I want to paint, or some faction that I want to paint a unit for, and then I'll go to those places and then find cool looking camo schemes or paint schemes that I like. But then I'll have to look through the unit's history on Sarna to see, make sure they didn't get like wiped out in the Succession Wars. And I'm not going to go through the effort of painting a unit that doesn't exist anymore in the lore, or at least doesn't exist at some point in eras that are commonly being played.
Sure. Yeah.
So yeah, and I sort of have a fondness for underdogs. So I got my St. Ives and my FRR, and there's a really neat unit that exists for about 20 years in the 3080s or something like that, in Merrick Space, the fourth Merrick Protectors that are all silver with red stripes. So I have a lance that's about halfway done. That's been halfway done for a couple months because I started painting those Liao units instead.
So you pick the faction, you pick the kind of the unit first, and then you look for the scheme that kind of fits what you want, right?
I think I pick the faction, and then I look for a unit within that faction that I like.
Okay, yeah.
And still, and that has some lore flavor to it, besides just they were here, they fought in a battle, and no one's talked about them in the lore since then.
Yeah, it sounds like Hanson's for some reason. I don't know.
Who are they?
Easy now.
What's your favorite faction paint scheme then, Rick?
Ooh, man. I really like. I haven't painted them yet. I've got a couple mechs sitting around, but the Free Razelhog Republic has all of their different units broken down by weight class. So the Gunsberg Eagles is all assault mechs, and they have this cool like light gray body with dark blue arms and legs and gold trim that I'm waiting to put together. And one day I'll get around to it. I've got 2 lances set aside for that right now of all assault mechs.
Nice. Got to use those assaults somewhere.
Yeah, I know. CGL just keeps throwing them at us.
Curious.
I had to do something with them.
That sounds like a cool scheme. Let's see, David. How about yourself? What's your favorite scheme, and how do you kind of go about picking what you're gonna paint?
So I'd have to say I don't actually have a favorite scheme. The closest I'd say is probably the Hades Light Infantry from the Taurian Concordat, because it's kind of your standard green, brown, and tan camo.
You're like the 80% of all BattleTech camo is good by you.
Well, so most of my mechs are painted in a tan kind of desert style, but really the inspiration behind that was the truck I drove around Iraq, which was a Cayman, and it was just tan, and I was like, yeah, that'll work. Mm-hmm. So I worked to figure out, like, okay, how do I recreate this color? And it turned out that Vallejo tan base with Nuln Oil came pretty damn close. So with an airbrush, the airbrush went burnt, and yeah, then 100 mechs were painted like that. So made it easy.
Yeah.
But no, I've recently started to play more with the actual camouflage patterns. So I'm starting to learn that a little bit more, and I'm going to probably go in that direction. And I'm finally painting some clan mechs, as much as I hate it. And they're Jade Falcon.
Oh no.
But well, they're gray with green. So I mean, I guess you could throw that into a lot of different things.
Yeah, they look pretty good from the
pictures. But yeah, so I don't really have a favorite faction color scheme. I like mercenaries, so pretty much whatever I want is what goes.
So I will say that I'll challenge all of us here to put up some pictures of our favorite schemes or whatever we painted up on our Discord and maybe Facebook page, because I think that'll be fun for people to look at. And everyone listening, you guys can put yours up too, because that'd be cool to see. Mike, what's your favorite, and how do you go about picking out what you're going to paint?
Okay, so my favorite faction scheme that I've painted so far, like I've mentioned, I've only done 3 schemes so far, 2 different clan schemes, and then the Kellhounds, which has changed as over times once I shifted from brush to airbrush. But the favorite scheme I've painted so far isn't remotely lore or anything else. After I did my first tests of like red and gray on my initial Game of Armored Combat minis, I started going into, once I got received the Kickstarter, the first Kickstarter, well, the only Kickstarter we've received so far. I did those, like I mentioned, in an Aurora camo scheme. So what I did for that is it's a really, really dark blue base, and then I put like a neonish green down, and kind of like this random lines color, and then like a neonish purple right next to that. And my reasoning for that is just because we moved to Colorado from Alaska, and just being able, remembering watching the aurora from the bedroom window and just how beautiful and awesome the aurora borealis is, I was thinking like that would be pretty cool to try and somewhat replicate onto a mech mini, but also just kind of like not actual aurora itself, but just like kind of transition those aurora colors into a camo scheme.
Could you, man? You're an artist.
For right, for a custom clan unit, which started out as like just being called like Clan Viking or whatever, and I think I've recently just been calling it Clan Ragnarok, but which still fits, right?
Sure.
For those schemes, but
you're so vain, Mike.
I'm sorry. But so that was the most fun, my most favorite paint scheme that I've done so far. The Kellhounds is all well and good, but it's also simple. So I think I just went too hard too fast and over challenged myself to the point where I was like, I just need something easy. And then I've been stuck in it, like I said, because of real life taking forever.
What do you guys?
But that was my most fun.
Yeah, what do you guys think of like just like custom schemes rather than going with officials? I didn't even think about that until Mike kind of mentioned, wanting to do something that kind of nature reminded him of or whatever. What have you guys done that much? Or I haven't really done anything.
I mean,
so
I say do it. That's how I ended up with my
think-
mercenaries.
I think that everyone should, because the faction schemes are great, but that locks you into kind of feeling that need to play that faction with those painted minis. To me, the wonderful thing about a very generic scheme is that you can just plug and play them wherever you want. No one's really going to bat an eye. Now, our community is great to the point where no one's really going to give anybody grief because they're bringing a mech that's painted like the Davian Heavy Guards and playing it as a Liao. But, I mean, I think generic schemes are great. Plus, it gives you a lot of artistic freedom to do what you want.
because I know
I would agree.
Go ahead.
I said I would agree, especially like having a good, and this is something I've been wanting to do, is a good generic paint scheme on a large pool of mechs. It's just great for whenever you want to play Op4 or GM a game, or don't really want to worry about what specific faction they are. And most of the lore says that most of these units paint their mechs for whatever camouflage and whatever environment they're going to operate in anyway. So to me, that makes sense. If you're not into like, I want to paint all the schemes or I want to go really detailed, doing a generic scheme is great. Just do it.
Yeah, I mean, I just have seen a lot of comments on the Discord like, oh, where do I start? Do I have to paint faction? That's what kind of reminded me of that.
Start simple.
Yeah.
Go with a solid base color and detail weapons, and maybe do some like a different color on a few armor panels.
Yeah.
Start there.
And if you're coming over from like Warhammer 40K, where you're used to having these more in depth and just these ridiculously, I mean, they do look awesome paint schemes. I mean, and I think that's generally where those questions come from. What do I have to paint them as? Because in Warhammer, you do have to paint them a specific way.
You can paint it safety orange and safety yellow if you want. Nobody's going to care.
Pictures on the Discord. But yeah, BattleTech, no paint requirements whatsoever. You can do whatever the hell you want. If you're new, like Dave said, start simple and then progress. That's what I did. Except I just progressed from simple to I'm going to try something extremely challenging. But I did, like I said, I did have a lot of fun with it. And you don't have to paint anything specific. You can make your own merc unit, your own house unit, your own clan. You can do whatever the hell you want. The majority of people in the BattleTech community don't care. They're just free to play. It could be gray. Is it better painted? Sure. It's better for photos, but is it better for a play experience? No. But, start simple, challenge, and then slowly challenge yourself, branch out. And I definitely think doing a custom scheme is definitely challenging yourself, because now you got to think things through. Yeah,
cool.
I'm all
but
for
the
it.
advantage is every time you mess up, you can just say, "Oh, that's part of the scheme."
That too. Yeah.
Well, I guess. Yeah.
And to your comment about like mass painting, like for like doing something simple and mass painting. I mean, my complex Aurora scheme, I did essentially mass paint that. I just did it in phases, right? Because I knew I was going to do them all the same scheme. So I based all of them, and then I did all the neon green line, like random camo-ish lines on all of them. And then I followed through with all the neon purple lines right on that. And then I did all the weapon barrels. And then I did all the laser lenses and cockpits at the same time. You can still mass paint a more complicated scheme if you just break it out into steps or phases.
Yeah, I would say be careful about your colors you start painting with. Choose like browns or greens or tans. My mercenary unit is like bright blue, which isn't that bad. I did all that with the airbrush, but where I messed up was choosing to do a whole bunch of details in yellow. Certain colors like yellow
You're getting ahead of
and
yourself.
white are super hard to paint. Yeah. So maybe stay away from the hard
We
ones.
can talk about it now, but I mean, what are some other colors that are difficult? I know Rick just mentioned yellow and white. What are some other colors that you guys kind of find are difficult to, especially paint over other colors?
Ben.
I've kind of been messing around. I cannot do like the cockpit glazing. I've tried it several times and I can't do it. So I've just kind of said screw it. And I've found that like metallic paints are rather difficult to do. Although the new stuff I've been getting with Turbo Dork has been really good. So I've been experimenting a lot with like metallic base coat with a Turbo Dork metallic over top of it for a different color, which kind of gives it a different kind of a glowy effect almost. So it's kind of neat there. But metallic on its own, I remember I painted up one of the Capellan mechs. I'm not even gonna try and pronounce it, but it was I painted it entirely in gold and then did like green and white accents on it. And I mean, it looks kind of neat, but it was.
What have you done?
It was.
Metallics always go on either too thin or too thick. Like even when I'm painting barrel details, the metallics sometimes they just go on too thin.
Yeah,
and you'll see the base coat underneath it.
Yeah,
that's funny. I'm painting metallics right now on this Raven. So I didn't do this before I started putting gold in, but putting down a black coat and then putting the metallics on top of that seems to help a lot.
Yeah, yellows are another one that yellows and whites are just really difficult because they go on very thin. And it's very frustrating because you have to do so many layers to get to a nice solid color.
I think it also very much depends on what brand of paint you use, because I've basically been using from all my yellow little details and freehand runes and stuff, I've been using Army Painter Demonic Yellow from the beginning. And it's not a great paint, that particular yellow. It's like too thick, and as you try to thin it down, it becomes, like you said, too thin, and then it
Vallejo yellow has the same problem.
Yeah, I hear it's with basically every yellow, but
so the problem is yellow.
Yeah,
yellow is definitely probably. If I was gonna say what is the hardest paint color to paint on a mini, it would definitely be yellow.
Yeah, I always hear white and yellow. I personally haven't had an issue with white, but I tried yellow on an SRM carrier on the missile rack's face, and it looked like ass. I hated it, and I still hate it, but I'm not going to revisit it because it's going to piss me off.
It always takes me
great through an airbrush.
It always takes me like 3 or 4 or 5 coats of yellow to get it to not look, not have like the blue poking through, or just have it look somewhat consistent on my Acer Guard mix. But
yeah, I haven't tried yellow yet. White, I did find with white though, it really depends on your primer color as well. So if you prime with a gray or a black, normally, you're going to struggle with white a little bit. But I tend to prime all of my stuff in white or gray. And especially if I know I'm going to paint it up white, then I definitely want to prime it in white.
Yeah. I think I've done a little bit of white on my Ghost Spears that have like white legs and blue Arctic torsos. But I think the airbrush really helps doing white so much more than trying to hand paint white is super tough, but the airbrush makes it much, much easier. And like you said, you have to prime it white. You can't prime it black and then try to put white on top of that.
And I think one of the keys to this like problem with colors, and maybe yellow is just this thing it's just difficult no matter what, but it is that how you layer the colors up. So you need to like take into account what you put on first and then what you put on second, because it will be influenced if you have an undercoat of something.
It's going to influence the pigment.
So what color do you guys usually prime with then?
Gray or tan for me.
Or tan.
It depends on where I'm trying to go with it, but I started just doing everything black. All my inner sphere mechs were primed black, and then I do my bright blue base coats over the top of that. But if I'm trying to do a lighter, I don't know, even that blue comes out okay on the black, I guess.
Does it really tone down the blue, though? Does it make it kind of like a darker blue?
To be fair, I've never tried that blue over a white priming, but I don't think it would, because I was going pretty thick on the base coats during that.
So you call it blue, but it always looks teal to me.
Sure.
Maybe I'm colorblind.
Probably not, but
we're back to pronunciations with
I'm only describing it in primary colors.
For my white, overall white, and then the light blue accent limbs that I was talking earlier for clan mechs after I finished that Aurora scheme, I based white. I will say I primed white. I primed white. I did not put a white layer. I just primed white, and then I did the blue arms, and then I did the non-oil on the blue and the apothecary white on the white. And that turned out okay. For the Kellhounds, once I started airbrushing, because at that point I was airbrushing, I primed black, and then I airbrushed red, a very light red over top. Well, it didn't start light red. I primed black, did a dark red, medium red, then a light red. So 3 different reds all layered on top to get different, like that depth of red throughout. And that was all with airbrush, and I think it looks good. So yeah, I haven't primed gray. I've only primed white and black. But I primed white if I'm using light colors, and I'm using black if I'm using dark colors. That's me.
That's what I've kind of done in the past, except I use gray instead of black for whatever reason. I don't know if it really makes a ton of difference. Maybe it does, but if it's going to be like a dark color or a camo, I usually use the gray. And then if I want some colors to really kind of pop and be kind of brighter, then that's when I use the white. That's just me. I think that helps. But
I will say, before I started airbrushing the Kellhounds, I would rattle can prime black, and then I would brush paint red on the black. And that took forever because I had to do so many layers with the brush red. With airbrush, I don't have that problem. I can go straight to red and not have to do... I went from a darker red to a lighter red for that depth of red, whereas with the brush, I was just using the same color red, and I had to do so many passes because of the black underneath. Looking back, it probably would have been better for me to prime gray or white, and then do the red, especially because Kellhounds are a lighter red. It probably would have been best to prime white, do the red, and then go black, because black doesn't care what color it is underneath. It's black.
I think typically. It also really depends on what technique you use, particularly if you're using speed paints. Then it really matters what you are priming with, because that's going to give you the tone of that color.
Yeah. I haven't messed with those yet.
Yeah, I haven't really either. I've watched some videos on like slap chopping and doing like a black to white zenithal highlighting and then just slapping your speed paints over the top of it. It comes out looking great. I just can't convince myself to do it.
It seems like cheating.
Yes.
I know on the priming side, I had for years I'd probably prime everything white, and then I found with this last batch that I'm doing of it's supposed to be a midnight blue, and I've been using a dark blue with a dark wash on it, and I found that the white priming kind of messed with the colors a little bit, so I kind of stripped a bunch of stuff and then reprimed it in gray just to make the blue kind of more even across the layers and stuff. So
Nice.
on the priming side, I think that's where I learned my lesson from was, depending if I'm going to be dark, then I want to go with a darker prime. So like Rick was saying, you really got to just think out what you're going to do and how you're going to do it.
I will say lessons learned for priming, using a rattle can in the Alabama nights during the summer.
Probably a bad idea.
Humid.
Yeah, I rattle can primed a Hitman that looked like, man, it was so bubbly. It looked like Two-Face from Batman. It looked like he just had a massive bath. I recently stripped it and repainted it, and it looks great now. I had no idea what happened. For the longest time, I was just sitting there. I was like, I don't understand how that turned out like that. But yeah, humidity's a
brother.
bitch. Thankfully, we live in Colorado, so don't have to worry about that anymore.
I learned those lessons in living in Virginia for so long that humidity plays a big part in your priming and your dull coats and stuff like that.
Well, even here in Colorado, it really depends on the time of day. Like you really want to prime if you're going to use rattle can. You want to prime when it's cool out. So for me, normally before I got the airbrush, I would prime in my garage, and usually my garage stayed about 10, 15 degrees cooler than the outside. So that made it a great area to prime things in.
And it's never humid in Colorado, so you don't need to worry about humidity. It's the temperature.
So I do think you need to worry about the dryness when you're painting, but that's just going to dry out the paint on your brush faster. But I think that's probably further up in the...
Well, I think that brings us into the basic techniques. And honestly, what do you think, Matt? Do you think we could go over what is our painting setup before we get into techniques?
Yeah, I mean, however you guys want to talk about it. I just wanted we can talk about kind of what you've got as far as your equipment, and then what everyone thinks are kind of the basic techniques before we go into any special techniques. So go for it, Dave, if you want to start us off.
So for what I have for my painting setup, I'll just talk about the brush side, because I know airbrushes can be a little cost. Some people can't afford airbrushes. Even the Amazon basic one that runs about $120, it's expensive. But for the brush painting side, I have a Army Painter wet palette, and I've got a basic little I want to say it's a Hobby Lobby palette. It's a little white plastic one with the little pots in it that you can put your paint in. And then I've got a lot of different brushes. Mostly they are garbage Hobby Lobby brushes that I use for either dry brushing or washes. But I really only have one good paintbrush that I actually paint the mini with, and that's it's a Citadel. I want to say it's a Citadel Layer Small, and it's an excellent brush. I've used some of the Army Painter brushes, but I actually really like the Citadel brush a lot better. But beyond that, I mean, having a little paintbrush washing pot of some sort is also a key part of my setup, because or else I've ruined so many brushes by forgetting to wash them. So now I wash the paint off my brush about every 5 minutes.
Yeah, I've done the same. I have a collection of ruined ones that I use for if I do the contrast paints or anything. That's what I use. Ben, what have you got at home there?
I mean, for the most part, on the brush side, I've got about 20 or 30 different size and style brushes, from flat to round to liners, that I went out and purchased after watching a bunch of videos and going, you know what, let me expand this from my 3-brush strategy of big, medium, and small.
A brush connoisseur now.
It works.
Huh? Yeah, so I'm really into this. I bought a pack of 4 paintbrushes that was like $25, and it was like a 0 size and a 1 size, and a lot of fine mink hair type weird stuff, that really it works. The brush, and I don't do any airbrush. I do everything by hand. So for me, the type of brush I'm using and what I'm getting ready to do is I've got to really think it through and pay attention to how much paint's going on, if I'm using a wet palette or a dry palette, or I've got some
I think a wet palette has
angles.
been a game changer.
Yeah.
Yeah, wet palette is good. Wet palette is good. And Dave, why don't you explain what a wet palette is for those people?
So a wet palette, for those of you that are not familiar with what it is a plastic tray that has basically a sponge material in the bottom of it, and then almost like a very thin paper that you put on top of the sponge. So you wet the sponge, and what that does is it transfers a small amount of water through the paper to help keep your paint from drying out.
Moist.
So,
Word is moist.
Moist.
thank you, Mike.
You're welcome.
I'm so glad you're here to help me with those difficult words. Now go back to playing an NTC.
Oh.
But a wet palette, it allows you to mix your paints a little easier, and you can drag them away from the main blurb of paint that you put on the wet palette and thin it out by just pressing onto the paper, because it'll allow more water through it. So it's a really interesting tool, and for me it has been a really big help, because I'm not having to add water to paints to thin them out anymore, and I'm able to work with the same paint for longer when I'm painting a mini.
Nice. Rick, what do you work with?
Well, I mean, I started with your generic collection of Army Painter brushes, and I bought a couple of Reaper ones. I really liked Army Painter makes I have like 3 of them, and this one doesn't have all the words rubbed off it. The Wargamer Kalinsky Masterclass. It's a little bit pricier for an Army Painter brush, but it's really good for all the detail stuff. It also has like the Kalinsky sable, which type of rodent hair. But I recently upgraded myself to a set of Kalinsky sable by Game Envy.
Game Envy, yeah, those are the ones I got.
Yeah, they're great. Really like these brushes. I've been using them for a couple months now. I think the most important, besides the wet palette, I have a wet palette, a little stick or something to hold the mech on. I switch between like a Citadel painting handle and just a bunch of drink caps that I have like blue sticky tacked mechs to. Something to hold your mech is really important when you're trying to turn it upside down and get all those little underside details that no one's ever going to see, but you have to paint them because you're crazy. But I think the biggest thing that somebody should invest in is good lighting.
Yes.
I have 2 LED lights on either side of me of my chair, and then the standard light in the room that barely does anything. But invest in like a $20 Amazon light, like a nice bright LED light.
I've got one of those sitting on my desk. It's the Halo. It's a Halo light with a magnifying glass in the middle of it. It works great.
I've tried using a magnifying glass, but
I don't use the magnifying glass. I
watch people.
I thought I would, and I don't.
Yeah, I watch people at Gamers Haven use like the magnifier glasses, and I can't imagine trying to do that.
Yeah.
I say if you got bad eyesight, then yes, a magnifying glass will be.
I'll probably get used to it eventually, but I feel like my fine motor skill is off.
Yeah,
by the glasses.
it throws the magnifier, kind of messes with you. I tried that on my light. I've got a boom light that I can kind of pull around and get different lighting and different angles and stuff like that. But and I got it off of Amazon, but it was an LED light, but it's got like 5 different light settings that like change it from like a yellowish light to a white light to a blue light, kind of to show different colors and stuff like that as you're going through painting.
Do you actually like change the different settings? Because I find I just set them to the same setting and as bright as possible.
I usually run as bright as possible on white, but
Same here.
I do change it every now and then just to kind of see what that's going to do to the color as I'm going through and painting it, Not that it's going to change my mind or anything like that, but
Right.
I'm like, oh, that kind of looks like shit. Maybe let me go another layer here, you know?
I will play this back in stories with that color
exactly.
lighting.
So I do
Right,
happen to
right.
have these dork glasses that my kids got me for painting.
Yes.
So it has like the light and then like the little magnifying thing that it comes with like a set
You
of
got jeweler's
it comes with
glasses.
like a set of
That-
6, and it is. I have found it's good. It's really weird because the glass is not full glasses, and so like you'll glance past the glasses to like dip your brush in the paint, and you'll be like missing the paint, and then you'll come back to looking through the magnifying area, and you have to take a second to kind of readjust. So it definitely kind of slows it down. But the lighting, I totally agree with you guys. The lighting makes a world of difference.
That does remind me of a neat trick that I got from Mike before I had good lighting. Was just wearing like a camping headlamp,
Mhm. Yeah.
Yes.
bright
Yeah.
ass headlamp on my
Yeah.
head. That helped a lot.
I taught a trick.
Yeah, you taught a trick, man.
Trick.
And the only problem is you burn
Aw.
through batteries real quick.
Yeah.
Yeah, you do.
Mike's turning tricks.
Mine just happened.
Hey,
Just the tip,
Just the
baby. Just the
tip.
tip.
Mine actually is like you can recharge it with a USB port, so that is kind of neat. That I don't blow through batteries and it recharges. But totally agree with the lighting thing. That's a really good point.
And I want to second Mike or not Mike Rick's statement on the handle piece.
Yes. I forgot to mention
I found that
as
has been critical for me as far as, I mean, I used to just hold the mini and like paint it for the longest
Yep.
time, and then
2 hours in, you got the clutched hand.
Yeah, then you get the hand cramp like halfway through.
Rubbing paint off.
being able to move that mini around and see where you've missed things. I know when I've been washing minis, I will have to move it around at 360 degrees because I'll know somewhere on that mini there's a spot I have missed.
Right.
And it's just this blank primer where the Nuln Oil hasn't touched, and it just stands out like a neon light on the mini, and it just pisses me off if I miss it until it's done.
Yeah, I've been using empty pill bottles that I just turn upside down, and I'll use a little bit of hot glue and just kind of stick the neck on there with the hot glue, and then that way I can just kind of peel it off when I'm done. But I've taken to, in the last 6 months or so, I've taken to pretty much sawing the plastic minis off the base. And then,
you cray, Ben. You
like,
cray.
No, I'm going crazy with stuff, but it's because I'm trying to work on my basing techniques and stuff. So I've been sawing the minis off, and then I'll just take 1 foot and just glue it to the top of the pill bottle, and then I'll just start painting from there.
Wow.
I haven't bothered taking mechs off the bases yet. I have this weird dichotomy where I'm super meticulous and detailed on like the painting part, but I'm super lazy when it comes to mold lines.
I'm almost done.
Yeah, I'm not taking it off the base. Like, then I have to go glue it back on the base.
Yeah.
Well, I think that brings up an interesting point of table ready versus like an art piece.
Yeah.
Like some of the comments that I got on the camo mechs that I put up on the BattleTech painting and customs asking for feedback on them was that the mold lines are still there. And my thought on it is I'm not a camo specs painter. I am not going to put another half hour into this mini trying to X-Acto knife off mold lines or clean up a misaligned mold to make it look perfect. I go for table ready and that's it. And for me, unless you're doing an art piece, that's perfectly fine. Because you got to remember, most of us are going to look at these minis from 3 feet away anyway.
Yep.
I mean, and the other thing too is like, man, I want to play with these things. I don't want to sit them on a freaking shelf and just look at them forever. You know, they're going to be on the map. They're going to be moving around. I'm touching them. I'm doing shit with them. You know.
Yep.
I don't need to spend a lot of time, you know, cleaning up mistakes in a mold that I have no care over or concept over. You know.
Speaking of touching your minis, varnish them. Varnish them when you're done.
Yes.
Yes.
And at least I found with my Aries from LVO, like I only did 1 coat of varnish on it. And
It's not enough.
Even
That's
that
not
got rubbed
enough.
off.
It's not
think,
enough
like-
on a metal mech.
Yeah, the metal
Yeah.
ones are bad.
Yeah, they're rough.
Oh, metal, you need like 3 times as much.
Yeah, you
And-
do. You do.
Might as well dip it in a
When you
pot.
guys say varnish, Rick, what exactly are you talking about? Like, is it the spray? Is it something you paint on? Just for those that aren't like,
So, I used to use Tester's Clear Coat matte varnish. A lot of people like. So you have 3 real choices of any kind of brand varnish you get. You'll have to choose between matte, satin, or gloss. Sometimes satin's called semi-gloss, but it's just how shiny you want the mech to be at the end. A lot of people swear by matte stuff. I've started using Army Painter's satin through the airbrush, but it's basically just a clear coat. I think it's just acrylic or some other.
It's just a clear
I don't know.
acrylic.
Yeah,
like
Yeah.
acrylic lacquer or
right.
varnish.
So I
For
actually
texture mini.
I do not like the Army Painter matte through the airbrush. To me, it dulls the color too much. So, and I found this when I was prepping for LVO, and I was varnishing all my units for that. Is that it would almost give it a white haze, and maybe I'm just not mixing it enough. Maybe that's a problem on my end, but
The frosting.
yeah,
The frosting is usually due to like, you were either too close, you layered it too thick, or the moisture in the air was too high. There's a myriad of things that can cause frosting.
Are you
well then that's all probably part of my problem.
are you thinning it
Yeah.
at all, or are you just doing
Nope.
it straight from the bottle? Yeah.
No, I just buy the airbrush varnish from Army Painter.
Right. So I use the same thing, but I drop 4 to 5 drops of airbrush flow improver. This stuff I have is from Impressa, but I'm pretty sure it's all pretty much the same. But just thin it out a little bit because it does come out a little thick, and I've
They
had
do come
similar
out a little
problems.
Okay, I'll give it a shot.
Yeah.
I haven't had any issues with the Army Painter Air Satin. I
Yep.
just use that straight, and I've had 0 issues. That's the only one I've ever tried because
That's what I
I always
switched to.
used. Yeah, I've always used the satin rattle can, and I liked that it wasn't too shiny and it wasn't too matte.
I do
So,
like the rattle can. I think rattle canning varnish is a great way to get things done.
That's,
Yeah, I feel
that's
like
all I
airbrush-
use.
It
Yeah.
is super toxic though, so ventilate well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just
I,
do it
I
outside.
like the airbrush. I like the airbrush varnish just because since it's so much more pinpoint, I'm wasting so much less material. Because with rattle can, 80% of it hitting the backstop. You know what I mean?
Oh, you have a backstop? What are you, a prima donna?
Yeah.
I just hold it in my hand, and then my hand's shiny afterwards. I mean,
Hey man, I'm renting. Okay, if I ruin that
too, brother.
garage door, I gotta pay for it.
just
You got a
paint it.
garage? Shit.
I got
Anyway,
it's full of shit, but
Ben
yeah.
is envious.
You have a house?
yeah, I know, man. Yeah, I mean, yeah, the rattle can is all I use. You guys with your airbrushes are too high end for me. But I've done.
Says the man going to Gen Con.
Hey, easy now. I'm just.
That's why
my
he can
trip-
afford Gen Con. He doesn't have the airbrush kit.
Exactly. No, but I swear by. I've still got a can of Tester's Dull Coat.
Heck yeah, so do I.
That I've been
I got like
running,
3 of them.
And I every now and then when I get low, I'll go search on eBay for another one. But, you know,
You can buy that stuff at Hobby Lobby.
I've got a box of rattle cans you can have, Ben. They're just sitting in my garage.
I'll take them, man. It's you
All
know, I did experiment with my LVO paint job with a satin or a matte, and I'm still on the fence with it. I'm gonna do this group I'm doing now with a matte satin kind of thing and see how it goes. But it gives it that some semi shiny effect.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which
I like
alright.
the satin. That's kind of where I
Yeah,
end up.
Not brilliant
I
shiny.
find matte just kind of dulls things
Yeah.
out.
yeah.
Yeah, Matt.
Yeah, matte.
Sorry. So real quick, I'm not going to get into my whole paint setup. I know generally everyone else did, and I've got generally the same comments, but just to reiterate a couple things. So like Rick mentioned, I started out with using my camping headlamp, just the LED light. So those of you that aren't using a headlamp or a dedicated like light to illuminate your painting area,
Light
and your
source, you
paint
mean?
a light, well, it means the same thing. And if you're just painting under your house light, so like in my house, I prefer like light bulbs that are rated at 5,000 Kelvin or daylight bright, so that white light. The majority of houses use soft white, which has more of a yellow tinge to it. So
Tell
if
me
you're
you're from
painting,
Alaska without telling me you're from Alaska.
so if you're paint, yeah, exactly. So if you're painting under soft white and it looks one way, and you're like, this looks really good, and then you get to a game store, and then it's got the fluorescent lights, and businesses all use that 5 to 6,000 Kelvin lights, which is white. What's that? That's not warm. I don't know. It's a white light, and it looks like completely different. That's because you painted under soft white, and now you're looking at under bright light. I don't know.
I feel like
How to-
I feel
Daylight.
like Mike worked at like
Daylight.
the light
Yes.
section of Home Depot or something, because I just learned way more about lights than I ever have.
Nah, it's
Yeah.
definitely from living in Alaska where you're like, I haven't seen the sun in 3 days. What does daylight look like? This bulb says daylight. I'll try it
Yeah.
out.
And then you start looking into 2,700 Kelvin. That's soft white. 5,000 Kelvin. That's daylight.
Oh man.
So yeah. So I started out with the headlamp, and then I switched to a gooseneck boom style, like Ben mentioned. It's a long LED light that I got off Amazon that clips onto the side of the table, and I can reposition it however I want, and it's also at that daylight bright 5,000, 6,000 Kelvin rating. And then as for the wet palette, so I use a wet palette. I still use it even though I airbrush, because it's really good for keeping, like mentioned, those paints good for a longer amount of time,
Moist.
especially if you're in a drier climate like Colorado. And if you're painting in mass, whatever paint you have on that wet palette is good for 2 to 3 days, depending. Now, the next day, you'll have to stir it back up a little bit because it'll start to separate. Just stir it back up, you're good to go. Where I really got the use out of my wet palette, though, so back at Copo, I got Best Painted Infantry. And I specifically wanted to point, talk that bit, especially with all the mechs, the new mechs in the packs with the jump jet plumes. So for my elementals, I did a mixture of, it was, what was it? It was red, orange, and what was the third color? There was 3 colors. Maybe it was just,
Yellow.
no, it wasn't yellow. No, I think I made
Gray
the
or
third
black?
color. No, I made the third color. So it was red and orange. And then using the brush, like they were both like put a pile of paint, not a pile, but you know what I mean.
Blorp.
Put a blurb of paint on the wet palette side by side, leave about an inch of space in between. And so I started with red, and then on the jump plume, and then using my brush, I would brush some of the red towards the orange, and then brush some of the orange towards the red to get a swirl effect. But you didn't want to do it. I didn't do it too much. I wanted to leave a lot of the swirls in there. And then so for the middle section, I painted that swirling red orange on there. And then I did just orange for the bottom. And then I think I did round it out with doing an orange to gray. So there was a flow of essentially, 4 colors, 3 colors, with the transition in between showing the swirls. And it looked amazing, which is another reason why I'm super excited for the jump plumes for the mechs, because then you can really bring those to light by showing those effects of very lightly mixing those paints, putting it on that jet plume, and you get that awesome swirling color effect that you would kind of see in like just this massive blast of fire coming out of something.
Okay, so you've brought it up now. Now we have to, before we go into basic techniques, what color or colors does everyone think the plumes should be?
Anything you want.
Oh, that's not an answer. Sorry.
Yes, it is.
I like the red orange, like the traditional fire colors, but I've also seen some really
I like the
awesome
blue.
looking blue. The blue plumes.
I've also
look
considered like a
awesome.
purple pink. I haven't done any of them yet. I did a red orange on some elementals, but I'm thinking maybe a purpley pink glow for my jump jet plumes.
Yeah.
See, anything you want.
It can be anything you want, but I like the black and white kind of, or gray. You know, how you can go all the way from black to white. I think that's kind of cool.
I mean, I saw a cool kind of a green, gray, white thing going on. I just put it up in the paint chat up there. I thought that was kind of neat too.
Yeah, all sorts of colors that I've seen.
Now we have to go look.
And the bluish gray.
I have seen and that's why I asked, is like I've seen quite a diverse number of colors out there, and they all look really cool. I mean, there's like really cool combinations.
To me, I look at it as blue seems more appropriate because I don't know. The red yellow just kind of reminds me of like flamethrowers, but a blue white kind of makes me think of like a high powered engine, like a rocket.
Also consider just the paint scheme of the mech itself. I probably wouldn't do blue on my blue boys because it would just get washed out. So find something that contrasts.
That makes sense.
Contrast the original paint scheme.
Yeah, it's good that. Okay, so we've talked about a whole bunch of stuff. Now we're going to bring it down to, we're going to start with basic techniques. So what are the basics? And we're going to make Rick answer this. What are the basic techniques that you should focus on if you're starting painting day one? Where do you start?
Man, that's a great question. Thinning paints, I think, probably the best, one of the best skills to figure out quickly. I look back at some of my first paint jobs and definitely went a little too thick. And then also, when you're thinking about your paint scheme, you get that solid base coat. That's your primary color on the mech. And then everything else after that is accent details. So on some of my first mechs, I went real heavy, painting like whole panels yellow, because I thought that would look cool. Of course, we talked about how terrible yellow is, and I'm looking at this Thunderbolt that I painted. It's just too much yellow. Do smaller, less stuff, less details, or smaller details, I guess. It will come out better. But definitely thinning paints. I think if you can master thinning paints, you got a huge leg up on probably 75% of the Reddit paint jobs.
I think also learning what proper consistency looks like after you've shaken the paint up.
Yeah,
because
especially if it's been sitting a while.
If you don't shake it properly and you don't mix it properly, it's going to come out chunky or too thick, or you're going to get all the thinning material that's inside the bottle. And then it's just going to be almost like ink.
I've been told that properly thin paint looks like skim milk or has the consistency of skim milk. I can't really confirm or deny, but I guess that's about right. It's weirder on a wet palette too compared to trying to do a dry palette. I haven't done a dry palette in a long time, so.
And have your paintbrush a little wet.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So one thing that I do every time that I paint is, from a basic standpoint, is I wet my brush first and then dry it. I just tap it and roll it on a piece of paper towel before I go for any paint. And what that does, it locks a little bit of moisture into the bristles. You get your paint that, in my case, I pull it off the wet palette, so it's already a little bit more moist. And it allows, when you're putting it on the mini, for you to work with it better. Because otherwise you get almost globs that will come off of your brush along the path that you were painting. So instead of it laying down like a nice smooth layer, it's going to be thin in the middle, and the paint's going to get pushed off to the side of the brush. So brush control and making sure that your brush has a little bit of moisture in it before you go for the paint.
Yeah, I mean, every time I reapply paint, it's the brush gets a dip in the water, gets all the old paint out because who knows how dry it is, and then it goes to the wet palette, gets a little bit, like you don't need a ton of paint on your brush. Get a little bit on your brush, and then I draw it across the wet palette to kind of get some of that big glob off of it. And yeah, like less is more with paints. So 2 thin coats is better than 1 globby coat.
That's what I was thinking when you guys were talking. Is less is more, and just the tip.
Just the tip.
That's where we start.
Speaking of tips, I fell into, when I started painting, I was trying to do all these little fine details. I fell into the trap of buying the smallest, tiniest, like 3 hair brush. Right? And exactly, they're terrible.
Yeah.
You want a brush with a nice
with a really fine tip on it.
Right, but it doesn't need to be tiny.
I think for starting, and I think that's why I like that Citadel layer brush so much, is because I prefer synthetic brushes over natural hair brushes because they tend, for me, I think they hold their tip better. So look for a brush that's got a pretty fine tip to it, and you will be able to do most of your work with that brush. At least any of your detailing work. It might take a little longer because you're not covering a huge swath of area with each stroke of the paintbrush. But when you need to do fine detail, or even if you're just you want to get that one rivet and you want to paint it metallic, then you can just tap that one rivet and you're not going to hit everything else around it.
Yeah. So people don't, as a beginner, I didn't understand that. The tip obviously is what you're painting with. You're getting all your detail out of that, but the amount of bristle behind that tip is what holds your paint and keeps it wet while you're painting.
Yep.
If you have one of those super tiny, like Captain Insano paintbrushes, the
Army Painter Psycho.
Yes, the Psycho. I have a Reaper 30O that is just, it's dumb. Like you dip that in paint, and by the time you've got it to your MIDI, you'll get one stroke and your paint is dry. Yep. So good tip with a lot of brush behind it is ideal.
And keep an eye on your brush as well, because over time you'll start to get some, I call it fraying, but it's like you'll get those weird like bristles that stick out and they'll get paint on them. So as you're going through and painting details and stuff, you'll have your detail line, and then you have like a little stripe right below it of that one bristle sticking out there.
You can clip those off.
Yeah, I just trim them up with a pair of freaking Leatherman scissors, just to knock them off.
Leatherman scissors, nail clippers, anything you can use that'll make a quick cut on the side of those bristles that start sticking out.
I use the little hobby clippers.
Another basic brush care tip is do not, if you ever dip your brush too far into the paint and the paint gets all the way up to the top where the bristles meet the actual paintbrush, immediately wash it.
Yep.
Because what's going to happen is that paint's going to get inside the paintbrush and it'll start pushing the bristles apart at the very top of that brush. And that effect will pass all the way down to the tip of the brush and start separating the bristles there. Plus, it's hard as hell to get out of there. And then if you forget to clean it, then half of your brush becomes immobile because now it's got dried paint.
Yeah, I found that one thing that I kind of a beginner's mistake, I think, is when I was washing my stuff, I would wash it and then I would let it go to I would leave it in my little washing cup. And that's another thing that can damage those bristles and kind of push them apart, is if you have the bristles pushed down against something. That's one thing that I've started doing, and my bristles definitely stay closer together, and you have that better tip as well. So that's just another thing.
Yeah, another thing you can do to save your tips, obviously, like Matt said, don't leave them in the cup bristles down, but also don't sit them in your standby cup bristles up after they've been wet. Let them dry horizontally first. If you let them dry with the bristles up, you'll get that water will take whatever little bits of paint and take them right back into
all the way down to the base,
just like David was talking.
Any other?
Just some basic brush care techniques.
Yep.
What's up?
I was going to say another basic technique is kind of harkens back to what we were talking about earlier with lighting. Lighting in a paint handle. Being able to rotate that, I will find myself flipping a mini around in my hand to get different angles on what you're painting, and that is key to getting a nice clean paint job, because if you're, no matter what, your bristle can only go, your brush can, Jesus Christ.
Your what?
I drank too much. The brush can only work in the angle that you're painting from. So you're not going to be able to get around a corner or the edge of an armor panel unless you move that model around. So you have to orient the brush to where you're trying to paint. And it sounds stupid and it sounds, very basic, but it's that important to bring it up.
Well,
and that's where the painting handle comes in handy.
Yeah, you've also got to think about how that brush is going to interact when you put pressure on it. Like, is it going to angle this way or angle that way when you put it against the plastic or the metal or whatever you're trying to paint? And what is that? If that tip is kind of curled a little bit, that curl on there is going to change how much paint goes on there as well.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. So the mechanics of that single brush stroke, you can't always do it based on the mini. There's just going to be parts where you have to move your paintbrush. But ideally, your paintbrush would always move in the exact same direction. Your hand muscles would all move exactly the same every time, and you would just move your mini in such a way that you can use that same hand motion to paint whatever it is you're trying to paint on the mini. So move the mini to the brush, don't move the brush to the mini. Ideally, there's always going to be, like I said, the little nooks and crannies that you're just going to have to kind of figure out, and maybe just consider, is it even worth painting that little nook or cranny? Is anyone ever going to see it on the table?
Exactly what I was just thinking about saying is that from a beginner standpoint, don't worry about the inside of the arms. Don't worry about the inside of the legs, because if it's at a point where you have to really crane your neck to see it, nobody else is going to see it.
Yeah. I do it because I'm crazy and like to torture myself, but
so do I.
Yeah.
But you don't have to.
But we've also been painting for a while.
So
I will say, if you've got a brush that does have so over time, right, you are going to get brushes that do have a curve to it because you forgot it in the cup and it dried at an angle, and then it ends up almost like permanently being like a curved brush, right?
Those can be useful.
You can leverage that to get into those super hard to reach areas when you're that anal retentive about it. But what I was going to say earlier about while we're on brush care, I can't remember the name of it off the top of my head, but it's a tan dish.
Yeah, I have some.
The brush cleaner.
Oh, the brush wax?
Yeah,
it's not wax, it's soap.
Or brush soap. That's what it is.
Yeah, like it's brush cleaner / conditioner. So clean your brushes with that after every single time, and then if they start to get a little fray or they're starting to lose their shape a little bit, you can lather it up in the brush and let the brush, and then you'll shape it right with your fingers, and then let it dry with the conditioner in it, and that'll seep into the bristle and recondition the brush a little bit to add a little longevity to it.
Yeah,
but
you can bring some brushes back with that stuff.
Yeah, absolutely.
And also, don't kick yourself if you ruin a brush. We've all done it.
Oh yeah,
absolutely.
Ruined brushes are great because you can use them for all sorts of nasty things that you don't want to use your good brush for.
Like
you can
Citadel technical paints.
Yep, you can cut the tips off and use them as a stipple brush.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yeah.
I've got 2 brushes devoted just to Elmer's glue for basing stuff, shit like that.
One of my old shitty brushes became my oil paint brush because you don't want that stuff to touch water or acrylic stuff.
Ruined brushes aren't ruined. They just need a new purpose.
Repurposed.
Just look at them and say, "You're dead to me." No, I'm just kidding.
So any other basic techniques that you guys can think of besides really brush care, angling, lighting?
I guess
thinning paints.
Don't be afraid to try stuff. I mean, it sounds like an advanced technique, but it's always going to be advanced until you try it. And it turns out some of these things are super easy. They just sound hard.
that reminds me, dry brushing. So
Yeah.
I've been recently experimenting with dry brushing because I've never really done it before. But some basic techniques for dry brushing that I've discovered or that I use are I will put the paint that I want to use in the plastic paint palette, not the wet palette. I'll dab the brush into it, and then I'll use the paper towel, and I will brush the paint off of that brush until there's hardly anything showing up anymore. Because that's about what you want when you're dry brushing. Because if you have paint that's stuck inside there, you're going to take a dry brush swipe on your mini, and you're going to paint half your mini.
Yep. You need to get 98% of it off.
Again, stuff that we've all done.
As far as what type of brushes do you guys use for dry brushing? I've found that my best ones are just like almost a little bit fluffy makeup brushes. I don't know what you guys use.
So I have the Army Painter dry brush, like 3-pack. But yeah, they're basically just makeup brushes. There's like a big 1/2-inch fat one, and then like 2 increasingly smaller sizes. But
I've used both. I have that Army Painter airbrush set or dry brush set, and then I've also used just a stiff flat brush.
Yeah, I have those too, and I used those originally, but I tend not to like them anymore.
The soft brushes definitely get into corners easier.
Yeah, I kind of use the flat ones for that. That's kind of the only thing I use them for. But the big ones hit the model real fast. And
for those kind of coming into this and haven't tried out dry brushing, why should they do it, and what does it do for the mini?
It highlights your edges.
Yeah, all the high spots. So ideally, you want to use a brighter color than your base coat. So you'll hit all the high spots, and it'll brighten them up, make it look.
Yeah, and don't be afraid to use 2 different colors.
Mm-hmm.
So, like on the camo minis that I recently painted, I used a sky gray as the first dry brush, so that it would kind of get that off-white color on the edges, and then I went back over it with a rust red, because I didn't think the rust red would show up too well on the green and brown, but it showed up really well once the sky gray was down.
Yeah.
The other option for highlighting is like edge highlighting, where you go and paint the edge of every panel, and I've done that on a couple mechs, and I hate it. It's way too tedious. But
that is definitely an advanced technique.
Yeah,
it's a huge pain in the ass.
Dry brushing is like the easy version of panel highlighting that does like 90% of the work for 10% of the effort.
Yeah, I tend to do a lot of panels and stuff like that. So, like this scheme I've been working on this last couple months with a dark blue base coat and dark gray paneling, I've been using royal blue and neutral gray as my highlights for those particular areas.
So I think another great basic technique for getting good table-ready minis is washes.
Yes.
Yep.
Washing is awesome because that wash gets into all the little nooks and crannies that you don't want to paint. And it will, if you're using something like Nuln Oil, it gives it almost a black highlight in between all of the panels. So, I
have some strong opinions about washing, but you're absolutely right. Washing is great, and I hate it, but I've experimented.
Now, there is a downside to it. If you use too much wash, it gets your model way too dark.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that I experimented with doing this dark blue paint scheme I was doing, because I did a dark gray single coat wash, and it got it to where I wanted it, but I also tried it like 2 coats of wash, and it got too dark. I did a gray coat, and it really didn't do much. So it's one of those things where you really got to kind of, I'm a big fan of, I'll use minis that I'm not planning on painting in a certain paint scheme as a test item.
Yeah.
And test out like different colors, different washes with everything, and then go, okay, that is what I want, and then I'll go.
One mini can give you 4 different tests: arms, legs.
Yeah. I definitely, I think of all the things I've experimented with, it's trying to get washes right, because with my blue boys, I really want to be bright and vibrant, and then when I started out, I'd slap some Nuln Oil on them, and suddenly they look like they've been playing in like a
An oil
firewood
bath?
factory. Yeah. So I think it's more advanced techniques when we get there, but yeah, I have lots of opinions on washes and how to make them better.
With that being said, we better head on to. So let's, these are we all kind of talked about the basing, priming, a base coat down, dry brushing a bit. Using these washes maybe not so liberally, but I'm not sure. So
Dunk that bastard.
So any advanced techniques you guys would like to talk about, and maybe why to do them, pros and cons, and how any tips or hints you have.
So I'll go straight into my washing opinion since we were just talking about it. Excuse me. So after I dunked things in wash and didn't like that, or just slathered it on, I started trying to do pin washing, which can come out with some really nice details or really nice effects, but it is also super tedious.
So what is pin washing?
Pin washing is when you dip your a needle or a pin point into the wash and then have it drip off that needle as you're. I used a very fine brush for this, but it's the same idea where you're trying to pinpoint, put that wash into all the little cracks and crevices without putting it on all the flat spots. Very tedious. Works. It's good, but it's kind of like panel highlighting for me. I don't want to do it. It takes too long. I want an easier solution. My next attempt to find that solution was to do all my details and then blast the mini with a gloss varnish and then wash it and then use isopropyl alcohol to take the wash off on a sponge or a Q-tip, preferably a foam Q-tip. The cloth ones just leave little bits of fiber on your models, but try to take that wash off all the high spots or all the flat spots, which worked okay, but sometimes took paint off with isopropyl. But eventually, thanks to Max, one of the local other really great painters in the area, I tried oil paints for the first time and making oil washes, and turns out it's really easy and super effective. So I'll use oil washes now, where I take a little bit of oil paint and a little bit of odorless mineral spirits and thin it down to be very liquidy, and then I'll just slather it on the mini, let it dry for a couple hours or overnight, and then I come back with little makeup foam, disposable makeup applicators, dip those in the mineral spirits, and then wipe away all the excess wash. And that works great, and I don't have to worry about taking paint off. It gets in all the little details, and then my yellows and my bright teals still pop after the fact. I am a huge fan of oil washes now, and we'll use them on everything.
So I think for washes, my experience has evolved as I've been painting. Originally, I would just finish painting and then lather Nuln Oil on it. What I have been doing recently is I will finish my base coat with the airbrush, then I wash it, and then I will do my detailing. So kind of a different approach to the way Rick is describing it. It allows me to kind of darken the gray on the mini, but then I can have all my other colors still very vibrant. And the other nice thing is, if your paint is thin enough, where the wash pools will actually still show up through the color that you're painting. So it'll darken that color just a little bit, but it's enough to be slightly noticeable. So on the recent ones I've been doing, the gray and green, that's what I've been doing. And some of the green panels, I will be painting them over where some of the wash is pooled and it's very black and dirty looking. And when I paint the green over it, that black will still come through the paint just a little bit. So it doesn't nullify the wash completely, but it still allows that green to be very bright and colorful.
Overall, we're talking about these washes are meant to get into these little recesses to make them look darker so that the things that aren't in the recesses kind of pop up as well, right?
Yeah, exactly. It kind of gives a little depth and shadow to the mech or whatever mini you're painting.
And there are a lot of different colors of washes.
Mm-hmm.
There's not just Nuln Oil.
I always tend towards black for mechs. I can't bring myself to do brown washes, but I did a
The
purple
sepia
one,
looks so good though.
probably on paint jobs that I haven't been doing, but
It looks good on tan. I can
yeah,
say that much.
I
Yeah.
tried a purple wash on my wife's very pink mist links.
I thought that looked pretty good.
Yeah, I think it came out pretty well.
Yeah, I'd like I did a tan base coat, and then I used an oiled earth wash from Vallejo, and that turned out pretty well too.
And Rick, just to reiterate, in case anyone missed it, the reason you were able to come back and wipe away some of that wash with the isopropyl alcohol and not lose any paint in the process was because you varnished between painting and washing, correct?
That is correct. However, I did on some minis, if I went too aggressively, did lose some paint and had to go back and touch that stuff up. So the isopropyl does work sort of like the oil wash. You just have to be very careful about it and not rub too hard, or you will get through that gloss varnish and into your actual paint. And then once I'm done, I varnish over everything again to lock it all in when I was doing that. But it does work, but you're probably going to take some paint off and be prepared to touch it up.
So
Anyway.
I got a good next topic. The something that I see on a lot of people's minis is overpainting of cockpits. So I think that belongs in the advanced category. What do you guys do to paint your cockpits?
I've just been using.
For me,
Go ahead, Mike. I want you to go.
I'm lazy, you know. So I took my original inspiration for my cockpits from the F-22, right?
Yep.
So all of my cockpits are metallic gold, and they started out as just metallic gold, and then to give it some extra depth over time while retaining laziness, I still do metallic gold. It's Army Painter Greedy Gold. It's a darker gold, but it's definitely metallic. And what I've started doing of late is once that's dry, I'll take one of my detail brushes, dip it in Nuln Oil, and put the Nuln Oil on a concentrated corner of the cockpit, which will give an even darker gold in one corner, and it fades up to the lighter gold in like the upper right corner, say. So that's how I'm able to give layers of depth in the gold while it's just gold and Nuln Oil. Lazy.
I would say that
Perfection.
I am very beginner cockpits, and I'm definitely on the Turbo Dork train, just like Ben was mentioning earlier. I really like their paints for cockpits, but again, this is just very like one color, not trying to get any depth or anything, and that's what I do. But
So what I was actually trying to get into is like, how do you actually paint the cockpit? Like, how do you make sure that you don't overpaint? What techniques are you guys using to get within that glass area and not get it up on the
Cowling or stuff like that.
Struts.
glass
Yeah.
area? Yeah, the
So-
raised areas.
I totally get it on the struts. And same with everything. It's just going back and hitting it with a little touch-up paint
Right.
to cover those mistakes up. It's actually pretty easy to cover up mistakes. Just
For me, I hit every cockpit that I paint, I hit from about 4 different angles. So I go in for the corner first, and I start about midway in the cockpit and push the paint toward the corner until I get to the point where I don't want it to go any further, and then rotate the mini, hit the next corner, rotate the mini, hit the next corner, until I've hit all 4 corners, and then hit the center. Now, granted, on some of those, that's easier, like a Mad Cat Mini, that's a lot easier. With the smaller ones, just like Rick said, get the paint in there as good as you can, and then go back and clean it up.
Yeah, just like Mike, I was also heavily inspired by F-22 cockpits for my original paint schemes, and I went with Army Painter Weapon Bronze. But I'll do so the entire cockpit that I want glass, I'll paint black first, just a matte black, and then I'll take white and black and mix various shades of gray up to white to do the brightness in the corners. And instead of going all in with the paint, I'll take my weapon bronze and thin it way down and kind of just use it like a glaze or a speed paint sort of effect,
Yep.
and then touch it up from there. And then I think what really helps the cockpit pop and set it apart from the little struts and stuff around it, besides touching it up, is going in with some targeted gloss varnish on the cockpit. After you've varnished everything else, go back with gloss and hit the cockpit itself to give it that extra shine from the armor plating next to it.
And I think
I
you guys
haven't
also
thought of
bring up a
that.
good
That's
point
super smart.
of contrasting color to your paint job.
Yeah, definitely
Make it pop.
contrast your cockpit to your paint job. So my blue boys have the bronze F-22 cockpit, and then my my blue greeny white Ghost Bears have like a bright green. And actually, that's one of the few things I use contrast or technical paints for, is just a little blop in there to cover the black and white, give it some glow or something.
And then the dreaded weapons. What is your guys' process for detailing out weapons?
Recently, for lasers, I recently just Army Painter's air paints. They've got that neon line.
Yes.
You can 100% paint with a brush, the airbrush neon paint for the lasers, and it looks.
You have to get a decent
dope.
amount on the brush, though.
You do. It'll take a few layers, but those neon air
They
paints
look great.
brushed on look fucking good.
That's
I'll
what I
try
did
that.
all of those camo paints with. I used the neon blue and the neon green, and then I just used a regular red for any missile ports.
Actually, what Mike said really brought up a thought for me that would really have belonged in the basic techniques, but airbrush paint, if you want a quick hack for thinning your paints, just buy airbrush paint. You can use it on paintbrush. It works fine. They're already
that's
way
true too.
thinner. They're almost ready to go. And
But they are
usually
very, very thin.
Very thin. Yeah.
Just like you
Anything
need 'em.
outside of black, I mean, you've really got to do layer upon layer upon layer.
They're great for glazing.
Yep.
Yeah.
And again, it depends on the particular color and brand.
I get dumb with weapons because, like, I take a pin drill and I'll usually like drill out like the gun barrels and stuff like that, and then like layer in like whatever color I'm using. Like for PVCs, I was using Turbo Door blue. I can't remember what it is right now, like Cool Ranch or some shit. And then I'll use like a lighter electric blue on side of that, and then like a white dot to kind of give it that glow effect kind of thing. On top of like heat effects around the outside of the barrel as well.
The heat effects I've been noticing more and more, and I don't know how to do those, but they look cool.
I haven't experimented with that
heat effect and bluing, I love the way it looks. I have yet to figure out myself how to do it. Again, I haven't had time.
I watched a video of I think it was B1B Flyer doing it, and he did a really cool job of kind of layering in, like it was like I use a gunmetal blue, and then it's like a brownish wood smoky kind of paint, and then like a hardened steel color or something like that to kind of layer it in and make those delineations of the heat kind of moving backwards in the barrel kind of thing.
Whenever I see that stuff, it makes me think that my painting is so subpar because I'm a basic bitch when it comes to gun barrels.
Yeah.
I will just use Vallejo natural steel or lead belcher from Citadel, and that's all I do. That's what I paint.
Yeah, if it's an autocannon, I'll get some black down in there and just leave it at that. I don't bother to drill them out, although that's a good idea now. Ben's going to have me doing that.
He's going to be doing that from now on, Ben. That's your fault.
Thanks, Ben.
You're welcome.
Just to add more time in.
But for lasers, I have like a red, a green, and a blue technical. I guess these were like speed paints before there were speed paints. I don't really know. I've only been painting a couple of years, but Citadel technical paints, and I'll get some of that in there, and then while it's still wet, go in with white and try to get just the center of the barrel, and then depending if I go too aggressively or not, I'll go back in with more of that, just the smallest bit of that technical paint to just give it that hint, that tint of color. to the glow
So,
effect.
so here's the, I'm assuming you're going large laser blue, medium green, small red. What's your PPC color?
Yes. Also blue. Same blue as the
Same
laser.
blue. Okay, interesting.
I usually use a lighter blue.
See, I do red for lasers.
For all of them?
Yeah. Well, except for medium. I do red for large and small, and then medium gets a greenish lime green color.
Mm.
And then PPCs are always blue, and then autocannons are always like silver or like a lead color kind of thing.
I've started using yellow for autocannons.
Inside the barrel?
Yeah.
So as if it's like shooting?
Yeah, kind of.
Firing? Yeah.
Just because to me, it looks a little lame if every other port that has a weapon is colored.
Yeah.
And then the autocannon is just nothing. So
Yeah,
I just started using yellow.
I tend to, for like autocannons and Gauss rifles, I'll do like a 10-star, the turbo door 10-star, because it's a very bright silvery color. I don't know, just to show like the rifling in the barrel.
My general rule of thumb is small is red, medium is green, or is medium blue. I think medium's green. Yeah, medium green, large blue, PPC blue, and then for my autocannons, I also do red.
So here's the real question: does anybody else dot their missile tips on the missile launchers?
Occasionally.
No.
Occasionally.
I tried
and it always fails.
I tried with the SRM carrier. I tried to make the face of it all yellow, right? Like safety yellow. And then I tried to do like red missile tips
dreaded yellow
in the middle of it, because like that,
now,
and it just looked like ass, and I'm just like, never again.
Now, if the missile ports are recessed, like on the Black Lantern, I do red.
Yeah,
really.
Oh,
and then I do red in the recessed area, and then silver over the top of it for the missile ports. So usually I do silver first, and then I go in with the red for the recessed area, and then I'll clean it up, and it looks really good.
See, the worst for me was when I did a Just One for LVO, and it had like
the missiles are like sticking halfway out.
All the protruding missiles. So I went through and like did gray on every single missile, and then I put a red tip on each one of them. It was so tedious.
Yeah,
it was so terrible.
I don't know if it'll be able to see it.
You're too close. Back up.
Fuck it. I'll just take a picture of it.
Put it on
put it in the paint chat.
Yeah, put it in the chat.
Okay.
It's a podcast.
Yeah.
Not a YouTube podcast.
Audio.
Yeah, I know, Mike.
Okay. So another. I guess I would consider it advanced because I have yet to do it. Is decals. Your guys' experience. Where do you get them?
Yes.
No.
Oh man.
I did them for the first time with the St. Ives Lancers, and it was annoying, but not that bad, and I'd do it again for any cannon unit that has decals available.
These are what type of decals, and where'd you get them?
I mean, Fighting Piranha. Where else?
Yeah, I put decals on pretty much all my stuff.
I think Fighting Piranha is the only people that print them.
They're the only ones licensed to do it. I think there's some...
and from what I've heard, it's a real pain in the neck to print your own decals.
Yeah, someone was talking about that recently.
Special printer and doing some.
Yeah, Delaney's mentioned it a few times in the Colorado Discord. Some people, especially on Etsy, print decals for sale. What separates Fighting Piranha from all the Etsy printers is they have the special, super expensive printers that can print white.
Right.
That's what I've gathered, and that's what separates them from everyone else. Is one, they are the only official decal provider.
And you're supporting the IP by buying the Fighting Piranha ones.
They're not even that expensive. It's like $5 for
a sheet of like
30
or 40 of them.
Yeah.
But yeah, printing them yourselves, you would
Won't Fighting Piranha also do custom decals for you?
They do, because I've done them.
So if you have a custom Merc unit, get custom decals if you feel like it.
That little icon I have on the Discord, I had made in decals. That was my personal Merc unit.
Ah, nice.
And
I think it just takes forever, right?
It took like 4 or 5 weeks. It wouldn't.
That's
it
not
wouldn't
bad.
As bad as I expected.
Kind of like ordering custom dice.
Yeah, And there was a gaming group I was with in Virginia that we built our own Merc unit, and this guy took a picture of his dog and sent it to Fighting Piranha. We made decals out of it and shit. So craziness. But yeah, they do custom.
Well,
to get to your point though, Matt. So I ordered one set of Fighting Piranha decals for my Kellhounds through Ares Games and Minis, and I've only put them on one mech so far because, again, lazy, life is busy. I put them on my Archer, and they look amazing. So the tips I have to go with it is to get you a set of Microsol, a Microset.
Yes.
Yes. So to start out, when you're cutting the decal off the sheet, you want to get as close as possible to the decal. I did learn through the hard way. I pushed really hard with my finger on top of one of the minis.
And squished your decal?
On top of one of the decals to hold it in place on the cutting board as I hit it with an X-Acto knife. And I entirely smudged the entire thing off with pressure, heat, finger oils, this, that, and the other. Completely ruined it. Don't do that.
That brings up another great thing that we skipped over. Gloves while you're painting.
You pussy.
Whatever. I think they're a good technique because
I glove while I airbrush, but
just lick it.
Still putting that pressure on the decal will still rub it off the film because it's on a film. So you want to carefully hold the sheet in place, get as close as possible with an X-Acto, or ideally like a brand new or relatively new X-Acto. Mine are old. Cut as close to the decal as possible, because what you cut out and put in a dish of water will separate from the paper backing. So if you cut a huge square around your decal, there's going to be a huge square around the decal itself, like the image. And then it's going to be a bigger pain in the butt. Right. So cut as close as possible. As it's separating from the paper backing, use a Q-tip, put some micro set on the mini itself, and then you're going to carefully pick up with a brush, tweezers, or whatever, the decal out of the dish, put it in place. You'll maneuver it around into the position you want with a brush that has micro set on it. The same brush you use to put micro set on the mini itself. And then once you've got it in position, you'll cover the entire front of the decal in microset. You let it dry, and then you come back with microsol, which is like a solvent, right? So if it's on a non-perfectly flat area, the microsol will somewhat dissolve the image, and like essentially the best word I've got for it is like melt it down onto the surface below it, which now makes it look like it belonged there, like it was painted on.
Right.
So you go microset and microsol, and then you varnish over top, and it's primo.
Yeah, I think one of the things I found doing decals for a while is I took a pair of tick tweezers that have like the little pointy end tweezers, and then I wrapped them in heat shrink and kind of made them rubbery, and that's what I use to kind of hold the decal paper as I'm cutting it out with a pair of like manicure scissors.
It's a great idea, because I was just using like my hobby tweezers and some other tick tweezers, but I felt like I was trying to use chopsticks to like, pick up peas. And the X-Acto knife, I use mine for all kinds of shit, and it gets dull. So I just tend to go with the manicure and tweezers, or the, like I got a tiny little set of the tiny ass Swiss Army knives with the scissors on them and shit. Those are really good to kind of really make those tight angles you need to make. Yeah. Speaking of X-Acto knives, I just replaced the blade on mine after like 2 years or something. Really makes a difference. Change your blades, guys.
It's true. Well, I still have yet to do decals, but I am looking forward to the experience, and I've got my micro sole and my micro set, so I am excited to try it out. Any closing words on painting? Anything? My own advice for everyone would just try it out. If you haven't painted anything,
Practice.
just try and practice. And anything else? What? Any closing segments for you guys?
No one starts off being a great painter. It takes practice, it takes patience, and it just takes a little bit of imagination.
Yeah, don't be afraid to try stuff. If you have a mini that you're like, I don't know how I'm ever going to use this, that's a great mini to just try some new paint schemes on.
Vindicators.
You don't like your Vindicator? You can send those to me. I'll trade you.
I'll trade you my Vindicator.
All right. Vindicator's awesome.
It might already be painted, though.
I'll take all your J. Edgars.
That's right. I have a... Go ahead.
I was going to say, I think my closing remarks is just to reiterate, you don't have to paint anything specific. Don't be scared to try something new. But at the same time, these are machines of war. They're not going to be perfect on the battlefield, right? So if they look a little messed up, battle damage. Next. And that's my remarks.
I will say,
Always keep learning.
There's tons of resources on YouTube. I learned so much from B1B Flyers videos, and then other people painting other hobbies. Like, it may not be mechs, but a lot of those same techniques be like, oh, I know I can use that. Basing stuff is way easier than I think people think it is. It's a lot of just
and a great place to find those tutorials is on Camo Specs Online under their tutorials tab.
Mm-hmm.
And they also have the cockpit guide on there as well.
Yep, I've used that. I've used their heat glue guide. I've used the
especially for the crab.
Yeah, definitely. That one got
fired,
Charles. That one got primed today. It's coming, Charles.
Crab has a cockpit. It's in the front.
Cool.
This crab's gonna have a lot of cockpits.
Oh no.
Every panel on the crab is a cockpit.
Jeez.
Oh,
wait till
man,
I have
somebody
ideas.
should do that.
For
and send him
Charles.
one.
For Charles.
That's my plan, man. Wait till.
Let's all paint a crab for Charles.
Oh, poor Charles.
I have said that I'm going to paint a crab for Charles with a bunch of cockpits, and Ben's going to get a Sagittaire that looks like a Vespa, because that's all I can see when I look at the Sagittaire.
So what are you going to do for Mike?
Yeah, that's the question. I got to figure out what mechs you guys love, and then how I can ruin them.
See, the bad thing is, I'd paint you up a J. Edgar, Rick, but I like the J. Edgar.
So does Rick, so.
Yeah.
I know. I can't screw up the J. Edgar.
Cool.
I'm sure you can find something.
Yeah, we'll figure it out.
Well, awesome.
Just send Rick a Nodachi with something really awful instead of a sword.
Oh, a berserker.
I'm not giving you suggestions on what that something awful should be, but floppy and probably purple.
Give him a berserker with no legs.
Oh, jeez.
Too soon.
Well, that was
I needed a 3.
Great segment. Hope you guys learned about painting, and we all know that
it went south fast.
We always do this. This is what we do. Okay, on to our return and report section. We'll have a 5-minute
you're optimistic
about the Kickstarter, because it was awesome, and I put way too much money on the CC on the old credit card. What'd you guys think of the Kickstarter as it finished up?
I spent way too much money on it, but I'm very happy.
No self-discipline.
Yeah.
None at all.
Whereas the last Kickstarter, I was like trying to be very selective about the packs I picked. Let me close the door before my wife hears. I bought everything, and actually I didn't get a bunch of the swag items last time, and I'm actually kind of excited for the fancy new dice and some of that stuff. I don't care about pins and stuff, but
yeah.
I did not buy the universe book. Well, I didn't buy the fancy one.
I did.
That's the thing. I figured one of you guys is going to have it, and I can look at it. I will have the regular universe book.
You get to wear gloves when you do
away acetate sheets. I just wanted it so bad.
Yeah, I wasn't sure if the acetate sheets were making it into the regular one or not, so I just said, hell with it. I'm putting in $200 for that.
Yeah.
That was just another 150 that I could spend on getting another. What was it? A company level bundle or whatever it was I added to mine.
I'll be honest. I'm really excited. My son is like 4 months old right now, but when he's old enough to like sit down and look through the BattleTech book, that's gonna be super fun, and I'm looking forward to that.
That's what I had a lot of fun. I actually went in through everything with my two boys, looking at the Kickstarter and kind of picking out what they wanted, other than just the straight regiment. So they put some add-ons.
That's
on.
bullshit. You have kids that you can accuse of making you spend more money.
Yeah, it makes it much easier. See, I'm just the willing victim here. It's not my fault. But I mean, it was incredible to see.
No, honey, the kids wanted it.
Yeah, exactly. I was just really like excited to see how many people bought in, and I mean, was it like 20? How many? I can't remember how many.
Like 20.
Let me pull it up.
20,000? I can't remember. 22, I think something. But and it even got over 7.5 million. That's just, to me, it's insane.
We were so close.
23,654 backers pledged $7,549,241.
That's amazing.
Well done, Catalyst.
I mean, they're still going to give us the 8 million stretch goals, which I'm super excited about.
Yeah, exactly, which is awesome.
We're getting a cookbook. That's what I care about.
We're getting a mauler.
A cookbook.
Yeah, Rick gets his mauler finally.
Super excited.
Oh, did they actually have that in?
Yeah,
yeah.
You can add it as an add-on, so you have to buy it. It's not a given. If we reached the 8, it was a given, but you can still add it as.
So they're doing the Somerset Strikers.
Yes.
Yes,
dope.
you can buy it.
Okay, well,
so you're
I guess
be
that's
getting
another
more money.
$35 that I'm putting in.
Yeah. And what was the other part of the Blood Asp also got added on?
Yeah.
A fan favorite for some people.
Yep.
It looks so good.
I think it was a great Kickstarter, and I think that everyone else has talked this thing to death. I think it's a great thing. I think we're all very excited for it. And in a year when we are all doing our unboxing and patting ourselves on the back for backing this Kickstarter, we'll have more minis for the pile of shame.
Oh yeah. Looking forward to it.
Hopefully I get through
Goal for everyone. You have to finish painting.
Don't start, Mike.
You shut your face.
You have to finish painting your Clan Invasion Kickstarter prior to fulfillment.
Just the ones I got from the Kickstarter?
Oh, that's definitely done.
Or not the things I bought since then.
That's just a Kickstarter.
I'll say just the stuff you received from the Kickstarter, because I'm not even done yet. Maybe I'm the only one in this group because I suck.
Well, you said it, not us.
Hey, I'm honest.
Are you?
Oh, of course. It's Mikey Mike. Okay. Moving on. Okay. S2 Intel Brief Unit Deep Dive. The Grey Death Legion. Take it away, BourBen.
So this month's S2 Brief is on the Grey Death Legion. The history of the Grey Death Legion. They started in 3024 as an offshoot of the Trelwan Lancers. The Grey Death Legion made a name for themselves with their first contract on Verthandi, where they became the leaders of a rebellion that fought the Draconis Combine and won the planet for the Lyrian Commonwealth. Their name and successful battle against the House Kurita got them their next contract, where they became famous. Working for House Merrick, they were granted a landhold on the planet Helm. Through a series of plots, they were condemned as outlaws and their newly built landhold destroyed. Rising to the challenge to determine the plot against them, they discovered an ancient Star League naval depot and, more importantly, an ancient Star League library memory core containing all the information the Star League had gathered. Betrayed by their own employer, they managed to escape with the help of an old enemy, House Kurita. From then on, they worked exclusively for the Lyrian Commonwealth and later the Federated Commonwealth throughout the Fourth Succession War and the War of 3039. During the clan invasion, they were one of the few mercenary units to win out against the invading clans. Throughout that era, they became embroiled in the politics of the Sky Separatist movement on 2 separate occasions, having to retain their loyalty to the Archon or turn against her. In 3065, after choosing to remain loyal to Catherine Steiner Davian during the Fedcom Civil War, they were sent to Hesperus II to defend it against the forces of Victor Steiner Davian. They ultimately failed and were destroyed on Hesperus during the defense. It would take almost 100 years, but the Grey Death Legion was reborn in 3151 by 2 siblings, Ronan and Isabel Carlyle, descendants of the great commander Grayson Carlyle, who founded the unit. They are currently involved in the formation of the Tamar Pact and once again embroiled in Lyrian politics.
And I love
That is the history.
me.
Long live Carlisle's Commandos.
I love me some Great Eth, but man, they stuck with the Lyran Commonwealth. Shame on you.
They did. They did. It's rough.
You mean Lyran Commonwealth?
Lyran, Lyrian.
Oh,
hey,
no,
Trent's not here
Lyrian.
right now, okay? We can say it how we want. The TO&E for the Grey Death Legion, they've relied heavily on the combined arms nature that was part of their founding. During their heyday, they usually numbered a battalion of mechs with a battalion of infantry and a battalion of combat vehicles. Currently, they are a combined arms battalion with a mech company, a combat vehicle company, and an infantry company. The colors, the Grey Death favor a mottled gray and black color scheme, but will revert to standard camouflage when the conditions arise. Their emblem is a gray skull on a red background. And your sources for today were Decision at Thunder Rift, Mercenary Star, The Price of Glory, Turning Point's Helm, the Grey Death Legion Scenario Pack, A Rock and a Hard Place, Tactics of Duty, Blood of Heroes, The Dying Time, The Price of Duty, and Mercenary's Honor, as well as Sarna.
May have been covered in the lore just a bit.
They've got their screen time for sure.
Dude.
More than that other Merc unit you talked about the other show.
The Rough Riders.
Could have been them. I don't know.
Slightly more.
Hashtag just
Who?
I love the trilogy. The first trilogy with the Grey Death Legion, their inception and everything. Fantastic stuff. Of Mice and Men are covering it right now. Of Mechs.
Of Mice and Men.
Mechs and Men.
Yeah. Those guys are doing a great job of like dissecting all the novels and stuff like that. It's really cool.
If anybody out there hasn't listened to Of Mechs and Men, it's a great little podcast. You can also interact with them on our Discord.
Yeah, they have a booth.
They
have a booth.
They have a booth at the bar.
Yeah, so anyone that hasn't noticed yet or is not in the podcast Discord yet, there was some recent construction at the Valhalla Club, and
Might have been my fault.
It might have been your fault, just facilitated further on my behalf. But each of the primary BattleTech content creators now have a dedicated booth, aka channel, in our server. So come talk with them. Trent still hangs out with us. We got Jason Hansa still, as well as Bungle Tech, Of Mechs and Men, White Fox with the Mercenary Star podcast, and of course Wolfnet.
It's true. Come
hang out in the Valhalla Club
and go for the old Grey Death Legion. Sorry to see you go and then come back
and then die again.
And I think you're ready to drink some drinks.
Oh, I've been drinking.
Let's hear about this drink of the month.
Cheers.
Drink of the month.
Hey all, this is Ben here, your BattleTech Master of Spirits. Get your mixers, liquors, shakers, stirrers, and strainers ready as we cover this month's BattleTech Drink of the Month.
All right, this month's Drink of the Month is the Archon's Judgment. All right, since we talked about the Grey Death Legion earlier, the Archon's Judgment consists of 2 ounces of lemon vodka, 1 ounce of Jägermeister, 1 ounce of sweet vermouth. Shake with ice and serve in a martini glass. Garnish with paprika and a thin sliver of lemon. And enjoy.
Is it enjoyable, Ben?
Well, how is it?
I found it too sweet. I'm not a sweet drink kind of guy. So,
you don't say, bourbon.
I don't say. Yeah, I don't say. The way to make this better is replace all that shit with some bourbon and put it over ice in a bourbon glass.
I want to let all of our listeners know that this is not a pre-recorded thing that we recorded once and we replay every time that debuts a new drink. This is live, occurring now. It's just similar.
Every time, except for the ERLR's laser. I drink that on a regular from last episode. That was pretty good. So that is your drink of the month.
You bottle caps.
Okay, we're rocking now. Let's we don't have anything changing from the news from the neighborhood, so the regular game nights happening around the state of Colorado are still happening as far as we know. So get out and game, people. Let's rock into the
I do have one thing for news around the neighborhood.
Oh my.
If you guys do have if you guys are planning a regular game night and for some reason you can't show up, please let your stores know, because there are sometimes when folks just show up to come to your regular game night and expecting the game night to be there, and then the store wants to be able to tell them, hey, no, it was canceled tonight. So please let your stores know, keep them in the loops, and let's go find out all those new players.
Yeah, a good way to kind of stay up to touch on that is staying or getting on the Discord or the Facebook for the community out here. So those are good places to not only link up with players but stay in touch with what's happening kind of day of a game or something. Let's see, upcoming actions. We have next, well, we're recording on a Saturday night, so 1 week from today, on the 6th of May, we will have the next Battlefronts event, Clan Invasion. And this is kind of an ongoing series of events going through the different eras in the BattleTech universe. We had the first one a couple months ago for the Succession Wars. This one's going to be for the Clan Invasion. It's happening on May 6th at Hobbytown, Westminster, so kind of northern Denver. We'll start at about 10:30, and it'll go all the way till about 6:30. There will be Alpha Strike and Classic BattleTech, 3 rounds of each. There's a lot of details that are on the Discord for Colorado BattleTech, as well as there's an event page on the Facebook group. It'll be a lot of fun. There'll be swag, there'll be prizes, there'll be achievements, there's all sorts of things, but it'll be fun because I'm in charge. So next thing, Martial Olympiad. Ben's running that thing, so Ben, why don't you put out the word?
So the Martial Olympiad is set to kick off on May 1st, but I'm still waiting for participants. So I've gotten one list in, and one list does not make a Martial Olympiad. So if you are interested in playing some Classic or Total Warfare, whatever you want to call it, the Martial Olympiad is a series of 3 scenarios that will be published 1 per month, culminating with the last one in July. So if we are able to kick this off, we'll kick it off. I'm trying to finish it up by July because I got shit to do in August, so I won't be around. So if you're interested in playing some Classic, kind of a tournament-esque style, go ahead and check out the rule system that's in place on the Colorado Discord in the 2023 Martial Olympiad channel, and ask whatever questions you need, but get me those lists if you want to play.
Is that being played at a specific spot, or is that all over the state?
Right now, it's if I can get lists from people in Colorado Springs, I'll pair up people in Colorado Springs and they can play each other. Same thing for Denver, same thing for FOCO, same thing for, wherever. We're just trying to pair up people and get them playing.
I will be putting in a list tomorrow, so if you want to come out and crush me in a game of Classic 3 months in a row in Denver, that is fully acceptable. So there you go.
And it's just one scenario you got to play in a month. So that's not like you got to play every weekend. It's just one scenario, one and done for that month. Move on to the next month, one and done kind of thing.
Ben, I was going to ask for the Martial Olympiad, since it's not necessarily like a singular venue event. Is this something that we could open up to podcast listeners as well and throw?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah,
we can put the document out, and
because I know we got listeners in Florida, all over the place. So if there's pairs in local areas that could join in on this event type thing, if we could throw these documents up, I'll have this edited within, I'm gonna say 48 hours.
Magic.
I'm gonna say it.
The magic.
I'm gonna say it. Yeah.
Bold move, Kyle.
Yeah, I
So-
mean, if we got players from other places that want to do this as well, absolutely. Let's get it done. You just need you and another player. That's it. So it's just not difficult to do. But give me your lists and tell me you want to play, and we'll start knocking it out.
Nice. Dave, do you want to talk about Q3 event there?
Sure, I'll go with what we have for. Well, actually, it'd be Q2.
I don't even know. Oh yeah,
event.
it's June.
But anyway, so this is the information that has been put out by Luke down in Pueblo at Gamer Night Games. He is putting together the Ill Clan Blood Name Trials that will be held on June 17th in Pueblo, Colorado at Gamer Night Games. The Blood Name Trials are going to be a mix of one-on-one combat as well as a grand melee. You will bring a unit from either Clan Jade Falcon, Smoke Jaguar, or Clan Wolf, all from the Star League lists in the Ill Clan era. And you will have to have a 55 PV single battle mech between skill 2 and skill 4. He will be using multiple attack rolls, and all entrants will receive a token that can be turned in during either the Grand Melee or the Uno Momento. For either. All entrants will receive a token that can be turned in during the Grand Melee. Fuck me. I can't talk. All entrants will receive a token that can be turned in during the Grand Melee for either a single Float Like a Butterfly or a Lucky Roll. Top 2 competitors from each of the 3 clans will face off in a 1v1 round. After the Grand Melee, the winner of each 1v1 round will receive a blood name. And we will have special roles in the Discord for the blood name winners. What does that say? Any competitors that do not qualify for a blood name match can join another Grand Melee round if they choose. So come on out to Pueblo. I know it's going to be a little bit of a drive, but we will be supporting this with prize support money from the Patreon. So thank you to all of our Patreon donors who choose to donate to the Colorado Battletech community, and let's make it a really fun game day down in Pueblo.
Yeah, they've got
I'm excited for this.
It's a really nice store down there, and they really support BattleTech quite a bit, so it should be fun.
They have a large stock of the majority of things. I'm excited from a lore nerd perspective for this event because currently the Wolves, the Jade Falcons, and the newly rechristened Smoke Jags are in dire need for new blood named warriors. So I think that's awesome. I think it's great that he's trying to keep it tied in with the current era and current lore. And yeah, let's go get blood names, guys. Let's go.
And for some future stuff that's coming up in Q4, we are looking at Tacticon. We'll have BattleTech events at it. We don't have any information on them yet, but I know that it is being talked about very actively to include maybe a mega-sized Alpha Strike game with 12-inch mechs. So keep your eyes on the Discord for more information that will come out about that. And then the following month, that'll be in August, and then the following month in September, we will be having Battle for the Sphere 3.
You messed it up.
What?
Q4. You're talking Q. So that one you mentioned Q4 as in fiscal Q4 because it's in August. Yep. And that's what, you've been doing everything else
Oh
in
my
calendar
gosh,
year.
come on now.
Just
Not
do
my
everything
fault.
in
I work in Army finance,
Logistics.
and we operate on the fiscal calendar, not the calendar year
I think
quarters.
most adults understand the fiscal calendar. Let's just from now on do fucking fiscal.
Are you sure?
I'm sure.
Well, we started with quarter 1 in the fiscal year, which was
October.
November, December.
Son of a bitch.
most adults,
Freaking guys.
like 80% of adults understand the fiscal year quarters. Let's just use the fiscal year quarters.
Okay, fiscal year quarter 4.
There we go.
There we go.
Moving on.
Okay.
I'm not cutting this.
From the heart, Mike. From the heart.
Okay, we're done with that. Lots of cool events coming up here in Colorado. It'll be awesome. So come out and play.
Can I suggest something that I've really wanted to say? I want to see like a Discord painting night, like a regular, like once a week painting night where everyone just bullshits on Discord while they paint and talk about
Yeah,
stuff.
we could do that.
Yeah, that'd be cool.
I would say Saturday nights if we weren't recording a 3-hour-long podcast.
Yeah,
That's only once a month, bro.
I've been painting while we are talking.
I was
Look
doing
at
that last
him go. Look at him go.
But no, yeah. So
Make it happen.
future
Let's put it out there and
Discord
figure out a good night.
Yeah,
podcast painting night.
Paint with Rick.
Saturdays-ish.
Can make some happy trees.
Don't
Paint
talk
with
about
Rick. Saturdays. The
There we go.
Valhalla Club.
Painting with Rick.
Oh boy.
You suggested it. You own it. Congratulations. You get it.
All right.
Nice.
Some happy little necks.
Happy little necks.
Happy little.
Okay,
mess.
we're gonna roll into shout outs. Mr. Rick. Painting with Rick. You get to go first.
Yeah, I mean, first I'm going to shout out my wife because she's awesome and puts up with me playing BattleTech.
Aww.
She plays with me,
That's
so
awesome.
that's fun too. And then,
We're still talking about BattleTech, right?
yeah.
Hey, this is the kids show.
I think I got a kid.
Yeah.
That's how we got a kid.
Shout out to you
Ew.
guys. Like this whole show is pretty cool, man. I'm not a big podcast listener, but I try to listen to you guys as at least within the same week that stuff comes out, but sometimes it's later.
As we'll browbeat you when we see you in person.
But no, like you guys, Dave in particular, you've been like a huge organizer for the local scene and really put on a lot of stuff. And really, Mike has been running the technical Discord stuff from like the beginning. And between the two of you and Matt doing stuff up north and Ben doing stuff, you guys have really made an awesome community that I have not gotten to experience in other places that I've lived, whether BattleTech or X-Wing or whatever. And it's a lot of fun being here and playing BattleTech with you guys.
Thanks, Rick.
Oh, well, thanks, Thanks, Rick.
I heard that.
Shut up.
Hey, Dave, you get to go next.
Well, my shout out is really just to the community as a whole. I mean, I know I've shouted you guys out a couple of times, but you are why we do this, and it's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun putting the events together. It's a lot of fun seeing everybody come out, and we want to keep on doing this. So thank you very much. And also to shout out our sponsor, Aries Games and Minis, for providing a lot of the price support that we get at a lot of these events. So thanks, guys.
Thanks, Derek.
Take my money, Derek.
Thank you, Mike. Have at it.
For me, I'm just going to shout out Rick for joining up with me on post to play an Alpha Strike game and make staff duty way more exciting.
And for coming to pick you up from NTC in his Chinook.
Hey, I am ready. Like, let me know. I'll pop smoke anywhere you need me to. You know what I mean? It's going to be purple, just so you know. So Rick, shout out to you. Thanks for coming on the show. It's been a blast talking through all the painting goodness. The Ill Clan era game, that was so much fun.
Yeah, that was great. We didn't even talk about that, how close that was.
That was such a close game. Oh man, that was so much fun. It was down to the wire and one of like the last rolls, which is how you know it was an amazing game.
I owe you a bat rap on the Discord.
Yeah, you do. But so yeah, thanks, Rick. And who knows?
Bondsman.
but who knows? Maybe one day in the near-ish future, me and you will be building a BattleTech community in Anchorage, Alaska, together. Who knows?
Oh yeah.
Time will
tell. I did take a bondsman because he didn't have anybody left alive.
Yeah, they were dead.
Mr. BourBen.
My shout out this month is Dave already stole it, but I'm going to shout out Aries Games and Minis again. Derek got me an order I put in his usual speedy time frame, so I appreciate that. And and just all of the Denver Metro and the FOCO guys that are out there playing as well, and Colorado Springs, fine, you know. Just get out there and roll dice, guys. That's what we're doing this for, to get out there and roll some dice and have a good time.
The dice don't lie.
And my shout outs are similar. I just really appreciate the people that are willing to take the time out to go and teach other people when we have these, whether it's the Friday nights or the bigger events, other game times, when they teach people that want to learn about the game or about the lore or anything. I just really appreciate that. So shout out to all you teachers. Also shout out to Of Mechs and Men, because I really enjoy going back through and like kind of reliving the first time that I read these books, and like how excited I was, and how I really thought, I mentioned on the Discord that I really thought that Grayson really was, in my mind, I envisioned him as Kurt Russell, kind of in the 80s, 90s era. So it's been really fun to like listen to that and kind of get back to that vibe of kind of like 80s, 90s kind of sci-fi funness. So I really appreciate that.
Roadhouse.
And we appreciate all the listeners here. We'd love to have you guys post any pictures or put any painting tips or anything up on the Discord or on our Facebook page. So definitely have it them. And with that, like 3 hours and 75 minutes or something, I don't even know. With that, we hit last call.
Hope you guys enjoyed it.
Last call.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.
And that's how we do it.
And scene.
Thanks for joining us today in the Valhalla Club. Special thanks to our sponsor, Ares Games and Miniatures. Ares is the premier online retailer for all your Battletech needs. You can contact us at the Valhalla Club at outlook.com. If you are in Colorado, please join your local community group on Facebook and Discord. If you are able to help support your local Colorado Battletech community, subscribe on Patreon to Colorado Battletech. This Patreon account is used to supply prize support for local events and assist in venue costs. Links for the Valhalla Club Discord, the Colorado Battletech Patreon, and Facebook group are in the show notes. Until next time, mech fans.
Okay, here we go.
Oh, God.
As I draw my breath in.
And blooper.
Yeah, there we go. That's pretty good.
You're welcome.
Okay, here he goes.
I mean, they are right? Like $2 for a string of 3 of them, and you can't just buy 3. You got to have like 4, so you buy in multiples.
Like
of
meth,
4.
you just can't take one hit.
No. So
wait, we should probably cut that out.
Don't bring that up.